Good morning. It is the 10 o'clock hour. It is Tuesday, April 26, 2016. The Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte and the governing body of all other special assessment and taxing district for which said board so acts is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at the assigned time. All other items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate the public and staff availability. At this time, we're going to take a little time for a moment of reflection. And if you'll all please stand, I will start the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Introduction of new employees. Do we have any? Okay. County Council, actions from closed session?
No reportable action.
Thank you. At this time, I would request any deletions, corrections, or additions from board members to the agenda. In order to add an item to the agenda, the matter must have come to the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. We have item number 6 and item number 13 that will be pulled from the agenda, and we will take those up at a later meeting. Are there any other items? Okay, so we are going to now receive brief reports or announcements relative to the County of Del Norte programs from supervisors. We're going to start with Supervisor Finigan.
Thank you. Had a few meetings, as always. Try to be brief here. Right after our last Board of Supervisors meeting, had a meeting with administration, the sheriff, the chief of police, social services regarding some of the homeless issues that we have here, trying to develop some strategies without hitting the front page so we can be more effective, perhaps. And then had a meeting with the Elk Valley Tribal Council, got to talk about some of the issues and some of the successes that this board has had with Elk Valley Rancheria. Had meetings with Senator McClure first at the airport when he flew in on Penn Air, and had nothing but kudos to say about that flight. Of course, he did have to go from Sacramento to Portland, but it was about half the time it would have taken him to drive. And talked about airport issues. Went to the point of honor dedication down at Front Street there. Well attended. Saw some old friends there. Went to, followed up after that, Rural Human Services had a meeting regarding homeless, focusing mainly on homeless vets. Senator McClure attended that as well. Great roundtable for about an hour and a half. Had another meeting with Senator McClure. Actually, he gave quite a few of the supervisors here in administration a lot of his time over a period of a couple of days, and talked about all kinds of issues, resource issues, financial issues, support issues. It was really a nice conversation at the Porta Pints there. He had the root beer, I believe. Anyway, went to the Children and Family Fair on the weekend, well attended. I haven't seen one that well attended in a long time. Had the Wonder Bus there full of all the partners that have to do with anything from children and families, and it was just a great time. And then after that, had the Special Board of Supervisors session. It was a closed session, personnel issue with no action. And then, as you probably all know, since I am an incumbent running, we attended the Tea Party candidate forum. And other than that, I'll let the others report on what they've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Gitlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try not to be too repetitive, but since our last meeting, the board obviously met, as Supervisor Finigan mentioned, in closed session to discuss a personnel matter. Redwood Coast Transit met Wednesday the 20th. I'm a member of that group, and we approved the agreement for a new general manager from TMTP Consulting, and we accepted the resignation of retiring transit manager Mark Wall Associates. Also adopted the budget, 2016-17 budget. The authority is still seeking a public member, so if anyone here is interested in sitting on the Redwood Coast Transit Authority, I urge you to put an application in to our clerk's office for that important position. The North Coast Unified Air Quality Management District met for its once-a-year meeting here in Crescent City. They meet monthly in Eureka, and then we have a meeting in Trinity County and here, and that was in just last week in Crescent City, where the district waived a potential conflict of interest with Blue Lake Power and the district. We also opened a public hearing on the 2016-17 budget, which currently enjoys about an $800,000 reserve, which is pretty healthy. I'm told about $300,000 has to be committed as a rainy day fund. So the real reserve is about $500,000, which again is quite commendable, and my hat's off to the district. Also made some adjustments for the hearing board alternates who sit in cases involving the North Coast Unified Air Quality Management District. Chamber of Commerce met for its July 4th planning meeting, where the Grand Marshal nominations were announced, they're kept open till just last Friday, and we reviewed staffing at the various committees contributing to this successful annual event. I participated in a grilling interview from KFUG Radio, and Paul Kritz, who's sitting in our audience, and that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, and it gave me an opportunity to relate to the audience, and thank you, Paul, for giving me that opportunity. Saturday, I was at the 100th anniversary luncheon for the Crescent City Women's Club, and they're starting their second 100 years, quite amazing, and talked about some of the great things that the Crescent City Women's Club has done over its past year and years, and it was held at the Redwood Coast Lodge, Oceanfront Lodge, down on A Street. 45 days before the election, I'm out politicking, and we placed some campaign signs across our district, and I want to thank all the volunteers who helped me put up those signs. It's very much appreciated, and we thank you for that. I also attended the Candidates Forum, where we spoke, the Tea Party Candidates Forum. Local Area Formation Committee met, and we approved the Gasky and Big Rock Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence update, and approved a budget with the Executive Officer George Williamson managing to trim a healthy 11% off its already lean and mean budget. My hat's off to Mr. Williamson. Also, the Commission met in closed session where it unanimously decided to defend a lawsuit by the Birch Ocean View Homeowners Association. And finally, enjoyed a few days off with my family and spent down in Southern California, where my grandson celebrated his 5th birthday party, and was good to get reconnected with family down south. That's my report.
Thank you. Supervisor McClure.
Yes, thank you. I've had a busy couple of weeks because I too am in the heart of campaigning and all of that. I was at Coastal Commission meeting when Senator McGuire was here. I was traveling, but we were in phone contact. And I too attended the special meeting, Redwood Coast Transit Authority and EMS, which is the Emergency Medical Services. We met, and I attended the Tea Party Forum, and I was able to attend the Children's Family Fair and pass out the Green Ribbon Awards to people who have made a great difference in our community in recycling and cleaning up.
Thank you. Supervisor Howard.
I wish I could be that brief sometimes.
I just wanted to be today.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can stretch it out, and other times I just want to be succinct.
I know the chair hates it when I do this. I'll try to be brief too. I attended a Resource Advisory Committee meeting and heard some great proposals, specifically on actions going in the forest. I see Carl Barley here, who also participates in our local RAC. Attended Treasury Oversight. I see Barbara is here today to present to us on that. Smith River Neighborhood Watch, and also one of the more important things that transpired this last week with the California Fish and Game Commission was finally some closure on the Blue Creek issue that many of the supervisors here and our locals, including our guides, I see Mike Koopman here, were present in Arcata for the final decision on reducing the size of the closure around the mouth of Blue Creek. And I think that success is due to a lot of public participation, both by our local representatives and also our guides and general public that came to the table to find consensus on an otherwise stressful economic impact to many people in our area, including the tribe. And I'm glad we're still at the table looking for science to help resolve some of those concerns around catch and release. Attended Solid Waste Authority meeting and formed an ad hoc committee. I know Supervisor McClure was there too. She just missed it. I formed an ad hoc committee to look specifically at their upcoming year's budget, and new committee member Eli Noth will be serving with me on that. Attended a local RCD meeting, also attended a workshop in Red Bluff last Friday, specifically on Senate Bill 88, which is concerning measuring devices and transfer of water to areas that aren't well served on water quality, and also the State Groundwater Management Act. Also attended many meetings with Senator McGuire while he was here. As Supervisor Finigan mentioned, he really makes himself available to everybody in this community, and I'm glad to see such great representation at a state level from him. His door is literally always open. Attended and made several calls with folks from the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. You'll be hearing many of those discussions transpire here today, and I hope many of you here in the public pay a great deal of attention to what they're asking us to consider, because it is something that we do need to focus in on as a community and ask great questions of. And I'll end on a literacy symposium. You've heard the board talk through our Children's Bill of Rights and around literacy the last several years about the needs here in our community to educate our youth long before they hit kindergarten and their readiness going into kindergarten. There's going to be a literacy symposium on June 8th. I know it was set originally for May 18th, but that date has been changed to June 8th. I'm hoping there's many people in this community could attend and see where we're at with literacy within our youth. And that's where I'll end.
Thank you. Well, I had a few meetings also. I had a resource conservation and development meeting in Arcata, and while we took care of normal business, very sad note, we went down to, we had lunch in Trinidad. It was a beautiful day right down by the pier, but our financial person, Gerry Hockey, died the next morning. He was at the meeting, appeared to be fine to me, and died early the next morning. So that was on a sad note. Very sorry to hear that. And then Senator McGuire, who was at the point of honor, I also attended along with Supervisor Finigan. He made himself available to be there and spoke a little bit. Also donated $500 towards the point of honor, which I thought was really a good thing. I did have several other meetings with Senator McGuire. Met at the Family Resource Center on the elk issue, along with Supervisor Howard, and as Supervisor Finigan said, we met at the Port of Pints and had discussion on a whole list of items that I had. So, and as well as what Supervisor Finigan had. So we kept him pretty busy while he was drinking his root beer. I had a short meeting with Steve Perez. I also attended the special board meeting. Had agenda review. I went to the RAC meeting, did a presentation on trying to fund a collaboration that I'm involved with the Forest Service as well as Smith River Alliance and the other entities or agencies. It's a pretty wide group. The Tolowadani Nation, Yurok Tribe, as well as Elk Valley Rancheria, EPIC, and I know I'm going to forget somebody, AFRC, the county. We've all signed a letter of mutual interest, so that's moving along. And after the RAC meeting, I did want to go to the candidate forum. I just got in on the last part of it. It was interesting. Glad that I'm not involved this year. And also, as Supervisor Howard said, we participated in a conference call on the ONRW designation, the Outstanding National Resource Water plan that we'll be discussing at 11 o'clock today. I went to Wairika for the NCRP, for the North Coast Resource Partnership meeting, 10-year anniversary. A lot of money we've, over the last 10 years, we've, in our region, 7-county region, have acquired over $66 million, which leveraged that into a whole lot more money. So a lot of good projects, a lot of things going on. But while there, I got to introduce myself to Curtis Anderson, who is the Northern Region Office Chief for the Department of Water Resources. So got to talk to him for a few minutes about some issues that we're having, as well as thanking him for Roy Hull, who works under him, meeting that we had with him and his discussions, which were very helpful. Also, Rebecca Fitzgerald was there, who is the Senior Environmental Scientist for the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. It's always good to see her. She does a lot of work on water testing and things around our area, so that's nice. Also, Assemblymember Wood was there, so I got to sit with him and have some discussions with him. So all in all, it was a good meeting. Went to the services for Betty Finley, as well as a celebration of life. And as Supervisor Gitlin said, we had a LAFCO meeting where we had several public hearings, including the draft budget that were approved, and there were no public in attendance, which is a little disappointing. So we are going to move on with that and go to a brief report from our county administrative office.
Last week I had multiple meetings, but I had a meeting with the judges to go over some items of mutual interest, a lot of human resource related projects and recruitments and issues that popped up, and had a conference call with council and outside council. Attended the homeless meeting with Supervisor Finigan, worked on a couple of agreements between the city and the county, and I hope to have one of those before the board perhaps at the next meeting. Those came out of the 2x2 that we last had with the city. Had a number of meetings with different departments and staff, and attended the Natural Resources Committee meeting. A meeting with the sheriff, had a meeting over CDBG funding and solutions to a couple of issues, one large one in particular, and was able to attend the afternoon lunchtime celebration of Jim Buckles' retirement. So Supervisor Gitlin was there also, and he was very happy and seems very happy in retirement. Oh, and I was also able to see a number of our youth play in a basketball tournament in Reading. They're AAU, all kinds of age groups, and every one of them having a lot of success and, even more important, a lot of fun. And myself and the sheriff last night were at the ball fields coaching softball and baseball.
Was it a little windy?
It was cold.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to take up the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, could I pull item 10 from consent for an observation and a quick discussion?
Yeah, I had some questions on that myself. So why don't we go ahead and go to that one? I don't know, Heather, if you want to address that? You want to come up to, yeah. Roger, if you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, I'll wait for Heather to come on up here. Originally, I was going to, not sure if anyone from DHHS was going to be here today. I was going to direct this to CAO Sarina for a clarification. It seems that we get these programs, and this happens to be a good one, this JUMP Technology Services, software maintenance and support services, but we get them after the fact. Periodically, I can tell you almost all the time, sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's as much as a year. In this case, this program has already been, it's already in operation. So the department is coming for Board of Supervisor approval, and I'm wondering how we can communicate with the state to get this into the hands of the boards of supervisors across the state. It's probably not just here in Del Norte County, in a timely way, so we perhaps make modifications, suggestions, and get them into the proper people before these programs actually inaugurate. So that was my observation. This is not a standalone. This seems to happen quite a bit, and we see it after the fact. So maybe you can direct that request to have these programs delivered to us, this information, prior to the actual start date in a reasonable time, 30 days perhaps, so we can actually have a say in this.
Okay, I'll bring that information back to our director and disseminate it to the team. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Heather. I just had one little question. I was looking at this and thinking, gee, this is a great deal, but can you give me an example of how you use this?
Sure. Well, just to tell you that currently we're entering everything manually. The staff doesn't have a software. So this is used for reporting, and it helps track deadlines, and it's going to be much more efficient and reduce human error so that we can meet reporting, and it's used for adult protective services.
Great. Thank you so much. Anybody else, David?
Move to approve the consent agenda minus item number 6, I believe, that you pulled.
Yes.
Second.
6, I believe, wasn't it? Oh, no, it was 7, yeah.
Didn't you say something in the beginning?
I did, but 6 and 13, I believe. 6 and 13, yeah, minus item number 6. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Oh, I'm sorry. And is there any public comment on the consent agenda items only? Okay, seeing no public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board. Kylie, would you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor Finigan?
Yes.
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Chair Hemmingsen?
Yes. Okay. We're going to, at this time, take up public comment. Oh, yes. Let me do that. That'd be great. Sorry, David. I don't know how I forget those things. They're right in front of me. Within that consent agenda budget, there was a proclamation declaring Older Americans Month, May 2016. Whereas the Del Norte County includes a community of older Americans who deserve recognition for their contributions to our nation, and whereas the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors and Area 1 Agency on Aging recognize that older adults are trailblazers, advocating for themselves, their peers, and their communities, paving the way for future generations, and whereas the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors, Area 1 Agency on Aging are committed to raising awareness about issues facing older Americans and helping all individuals to thrive in communities of their choice for as long as possible. And whereas we all appreciate the value of inclusion and support in helping older adults successfully contribute to and benefit from their communities. And whereas our community can provide opportunities to enrich the lives of individuals of all ages by promoting and engaging in activities, wellness, and social involvement, emphasizing home and community-based services that support independent living, ensuring community members can benefit from the contributions and experience of older adults. Now, therefore, be it resolved The Del Norte County Board of Supervisors do hereby proclaim May 2016 to be Older Americans Month. We urge every resident to take time this month to acknowledge older adults and the people who serve them as powerful and vital individuals who greatly contribute to our community. Passed and adopted this 26th day of April 2016. Okay, so thank you, David, for reminding me of that. Somehow I lost my train of thought on that little thing. At my age, the train leaves the station about every 10 seconds. So, okay, we're going to have public comment now. It's 10:25. Members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board, or if you're addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments until the board takes up that matter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and please identify yourself to the clerk so she can write that down if there is any public comment.
Chair, I had people sign up.
For public comment?
Yes.
Okay.
So first up is Charles Swenson.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
I'm Charles Swenson. I'm from Big Rock Community Service District. I've got some stuff I need to, let's say,
Charles, are you here to speak on the ONRW issue?
it has to do with the Smith River.
Yeah, we're going to take up that item at 11 o'clock. You can certainly speak now if you want, but it might flow in better if you do it
11 o'clock.
at the time when we have public comment after the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Angela Glore.
Good morning. My name is Angela Glore. I'm a county resident and the executive director of First 5 Del Norte, and I'm going to talk fast. Last week, the Right Start Commission released a report titled Rebuilding the California Dream. This commission, made up of former legislators, CEOs of high-profile businesses like Apple and Kaiser Permanente, policy experts, educators, and others, put forward suggestions for a child and family-centered approach to building a strong future California. I've brought you all copies of sections of this report, and I'm here both to thank you for work that you have already done that moves Del Norte County towards some of the goals outlined, and offer a suggestion for one way forward. This commission put forward 4 big picture recommendations. 1, commit to universal access to high-quality early learning and care programs for 0 to 5. 2, invest in preventative health care. 3, support public awareness of and family education about the importance of the early years. And 4, build a more responsive business community. Their recommendations publicly acknowledge 2 truths. First, 90% of brain development happens before a person's 5th birthday, so the first 5 years are a critical period for adult success. Second, each dollar spent on child development in the first 3 years of life provides a greater return on investment than any other period of life. This board took a giant step toward a child-centered approach a year ago when you passed the Children's Bill of Rights and started the children's budget process, and I thank you for this forward-thinking decision. I believe it provides a path forward to creating a better future for Del Norte's children and communities. But the children's budget will only do its job if there is actual change in how dollars are allocated. I have heard more than once that changing the budget priorities will cost people jobs, and in a small community like ours, it is hard not to be sympathetic to that argument because each of us probably knows somebody in one of those jobs. So my suggestion for taking the next step is that we need to stop acting as if people are only capable of doing the one job that they have been doing for the last several years. If an employee is doing a great job providing family strengthening to families with 10 to 14-year-olds, that same person could probably do a great job providing those same family strengthening activities to families with 0 to 5-year-olds. And that position doesn't have to be housed in a county office building. Rent an office at the Family Resource Center, the Del Norte Child Care Council, or at a school, places where families actually spend time. Del Norte's next steps can be exciting and creative. They don't have to be scary. We can do this. We can provide a better future for our community and its children. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
That's all that signed up.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
To interrupt you here, Rich, but I want to thank Angela very much for bringing that up. That's part of a discussion, ongoing discussion with this board, and I'm glad that you brought up that the rumor, if you will, that change means that somebody's going to lose a job. That is simply not true. And the other part is the business community needed to hear that an investment of $1 between ages of 1 and 3 is a 7 times yield, and we'll go forward with that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anything from anybody else? Okay, thank you again. All right, it is past the 10:30 hour, so we have got some presentations from 3 lovely ladies that are competing for Fair Rodeo Queen. So if you want to come up, you got a little presentation. Yep, please.
So, first, my name is Cadence Salas. I'm 13 years old, and I attend Gasky Mountain School in Gasky. And I just want to say thank you for letting us have the opportunity to come here. I have dreamed of having my own horse for as long as I can remember. Last April, my dream finally became a reality. I had been driving by a beautiful black and white paint for a few months. I even told my mom she was my favorite in the pasture. And now she is standing right in front of me and is my very own horse. When I first met Classy, she had an abscess in her hoof. I wasn't able to ride for the first couple of months, but I still spent every moment possible with her. I brushed her, braided her hair, and got to know her personality, which is definitely one of a kind. During one of my evening visits, I brought Classy a bag of apples because all horses like apples, right? No, she turned her nose up to them and wouldn't even take a bite. This was my first glimpse at her diva personality. We later discovered she will eat apples if they're cut up into small pieces and the skin is removed. Some of my friends have even nicknamed her Diva because of her bossy attitude and the way she prances around with her head high when I'm riding her. Most girls my age are busy hanging out with their friends or talking and texting each other on their cell phones. I would rather spend my evenings brushing Classy, braiding her mane and tail, or even going for a short ride after school. On the weekends, I try to go for a ride at least one of the days. Our favorite thing to do is poker penning. She likes to chase the cows and gets excited working the gate. We have also competed in Gymkhana, a trail competition, and our local 4-H horse show last summer. When I look at the bond we have formed over the last 10 months, I can't wait to see what we'll accomplish in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nicely done.
Floor. This is a little bit tall for me. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brinkley Webb. I'm 13 years old and I attend Redwood School. Thank you for allowing us to come today and practice our public speaking skills. As a small child, I used to hide behind my mom's legs. Whenever people would come around, mom said it was like having an octopus wrapped around her legs. And she couldn't even move. She would try to untangle me, but I wasn't letting go. I didn't speak to people due to extreme shyness. Many wondered and asked if I ever spoke. Yes, my mom would assure them, at home, you cannot get her to be quiet. One of my teachers, Mr. Piercy, was shocked when in the middle of the school year, I finally spoke in class. And he had a look of shock on his face. When he told my mom at the end of the day, she spoke. Shyness and public speaking skills is a struggle that many of us share. Finding outlets and supportive programs for kids and adults to practice these days is important. Giving us kids the opportunities to practice public speaking skills helps us grow as students and as people. Thank you, Board of Supervisors, for having us back this year and giving us this opportunity. Today, I would like to talk to you about the Del Norte County Fair and Rodeo. The fair has been a local county tradition since 1892. State and county fairs have been organized in the United States since 1841. When the first gathering was organized in New York, their food, both in the production and enjoyment, has been the centerpiece from the very beginning. The judging of livestock in the U.S. dates to 19th century. Recipe judging is one of the oldest kind of competition at the fairs, dating to the early 1800s. Our county fair is more than a carnival, it's a community. Attending the fair is an opportunity for adults to reconnect with community leaders and teachers from childhood, kids to connect with one another over the summer and to make new friends, and special for its state. About 1920, the fair moved into Crescent City. Today, our fair served 28,000 paid tickets through the gate. According to one rodeo committee member, approximately 1,200 people watch the rodeo. I'm excited to share my knowledge about horses and the rodeo events I love to ride in. In our local junior rodeo, I participate in steer riding, which are teenage bull by the records, goat tying, and barrel racing. In our main rodeo, I participate in our flags. I'm practicing every day to hopefully qualify to run barrels with the pros in our big rodeo. It's important to encourage participation and attendance in our local fair and rodeo because it's a vital contribution to our community. The fair provides entertainment and a great value. And you can't beat free, come on. Anyone can enter projects, to name just a few: photography, paintings, baking goods, canning, and sewing. Again, for free. The fair provides a lot of entertainment that other places charge for. On Friday, August 5th, the fair, a free concert, Confederate Railroad Country Artists, is at 6 p.m. We have 2 free rodeos. Saturday, August 6th, the Junior Rodeo, 18 and under, starts at 9 a.m., and the Professional Rodeo starts at 2 p.m. Saturday of fair. Sunday, August 7th, D Derby and Tough Truck, 2 p.m. The electric atmosphere of the county fair encourages the cultivation and vibrant community. People from throughout our county are drawn together for a common cause, showcasing the achievements of their citizens, promoting our youth, and longtime friendships that are rekindled over new memories. And I have these slips of paper to give to you to show all of our events for our rodeo competition.
Yeah, if you'll just give that to the clerk, that'd be great. I'm certainly glad you got over your shyness. Excellent job.
Hi, my name is Carly Rose Harper. I am 9 years old. I go to Redwood Elementary School. My teacher is Deja Wakefield, and today I will be practicing my speech for you. It's that moment at the gate when I've got 1,000 pounds of muscle dancing beneath me, ready to give me his all. That is the moment my horse and I live for. The gate that we could be entering could be the rodeo arena gate to run barrels, or the sorting gate to do competition sorting, or even the gate at our family ranch to work our cattle. Horses have been a part of my life since I was born. I'm a 6th-generation family donor who has used horses for work, travel, or just to have fun. My great-great-grandma Eva actually rode a horse here on Elk Valley to Cave Junction to take a test for her teacher's license. And did you know she rode side saddle? My great-grandpa Ralph and his brothers drove teams of horses to log trees, plow fields, cut hay, and even breed Sled Girl. One of my aunts won Northwest Trainer of the Year for racing horses throughout Washington to Southern California. Our family has always raised beef cattle and milk cows. Horses help us every day. My grandma Helen, my auntie, and my mom have gathered up lots and lots of cows. I like to help them gather cows with my horse Buck when the calves needed shots and their calves needed castrated. So it is only natural that I love horses. They are a part of me and my family's tradition. So far, I have ridden 4 horses, and Buck is my favorite. Last year, I won a saddle on him thanks to the Redwood Coast Rodeo. One thing my family has taught me is you must respect a horse and think of what he has done for you. A horse is not a machine. He has feelings and will not work for you or be a good partner unless he likes you. I spend a lot of time with my horse. I see him every day, and he looks forward to seeing me. He's easy to catch, so I know he likes me. I am excited to run for rodeo queen because my relatives have competed many years at this Del Norte County Fair. They have raced horses, raced chariots, and done many horse competitions. I like to dress up and compete and want to win just like they did. I'm proud of my family and all the horses that have worked for us for the past 150 years. We couldn't have lived or survived without them. So when you see me carrying the flag or doing the Queen's Wave or competing, remember, my horse and I are partners when we enter the gate.
Great job, all three of you. Excellent. Very nice. Very nicely done. Let's give them another round. And good luck to all of you. Okay, we're going to take up the budget transfers. And I did have a question, and Heather, maybe I did ask Jay about this, but this item number 12, transfer 04-04, in looking at the paperwork that goes along with it, and I don't remember ever seeing this in a final presentation, the items are crossed out, and then MH is put in front of the description, I think, of the items. So it was a little confusing to me under the department name where you've crossed out department allotment, professional services, psychiatrist, and professional services emergency care. And I just caught my eye because I'd never seen it before. So I don't know why that was done or who did it. Was that done after? And I know Barbara signed it, so maybe you don't know, but.
I believe it was a simple mistake that it should have just indicated mental health is the budget.
Okay.
Is the department that the budget is. These are more specifically the line items of it.
But the line items
fall under mental health.
The line items are all correct, from what I understand.
Yes.
As far as the fund, the department, and the line items. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, if I could, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Heather, the $307,000, I know it comes out of the departmental allotment, but what does that mean? Why do we all of a sudden have another $150,000 for psychiatrists and another $157,000 for emergency care?
Sure. My understanding is that we've had a really high utilization of the emergency room for psychiatric emergencies, and we're trying to stabilize patients and provide clinic services, which is the psychiatric care. So
is that a federal drawdown of dollars? Is it something that we had in the mental health budget that we're moving from one place to another?
I would have to get back to you.
And I'm sorry, because I know that,
okay.
yeah, you're new and doing a great job too.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you could, in the future, I know it's not you, it's Barbara,
Sure.
but great to know.
Yes, Supervisor Gitlin.
Heather,
Yes.
has the psychiatrist actually begun working? Do you have her on staff now?
We have a locum psychiatrist, and we're also providing telepsych services.
Well, the telepsych I know about, but we were talking about a live 4-day-per-week psychiatrist.
Well, that's something we'd have the need for. We'd like to work up to that. We don't have the 4 days at the time.
All right, because I've received a number of calls from people who are under the understanding, perhaps it's a misunderstanding, that the psychiatrist, I'm sorry, I don't remember her name, it's a lady, has actually started
Dr. Tomar.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tomar. She's actually started working and is seeing patients, is that correct?
Yes, she's
Okay.
seeing patients.
So this additional funding of $307,000 will go to her continuation in employment?
Yes.
So the additional funding only covered a certain time period, is that my understanding?
Yes, and we have an existing contract with Dr. Tomar and an hourly rate that was established previously, and I can provide you that information if you need it as well.
What are the criteria under which someone from the community can see Dr. Tomar. As I said, I've received a number of phone calls from those people who wish to see a psychiatrist, not telepsych. And I know there's a telepsych program, which I frankly have my misgivings on its effectiveness, because as someone who is of great need like that and looking into a screen in front of you and seeing a vision, to me is, it's problematic. So what are the criteria under which someone is allowed to see Dr. Tomar? They have to come in for an interview, or what's the protocol?
Well, it's very individually based, and it would be based on the needs of somebody at any given time. So to come into the mental health office and have their needs assessed would be the first step.
Okay, that's why I'll refer to those individuals when you talk about the office on K Street.
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Yes. Any other?
Anything else? Thank you, Heather, I appreciate that. Okay, can I get a motion?
Move to approve budget transfers 0402, 0404, 0405, 0406, and 0407, which can be found on the agenda as items 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Okay,
Chair?
13.
Point of
13 is
order,
being-
Mr. Chairman, was I misunderstanding?
13 is,
13.
05 repealed, was that pulled off?
Yes.
That's number 05.
That motion would be then to omit 05, would be 02, 04, 06, 07, items 11, 12, omit item 13, and items 14 and 15 on the budget transfer.
okay, I have a motion and a second. Any public comment on these budget transfers? Okay, seeing no public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board. Any further discussion? Kylie, would you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Finigan,
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin,
Yes.
Supervisor McClure,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingsen.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we do have another timed item, 10:45. Maggie Kraft is going to give us a little update on our Area 1 Agency on Aging.
All right.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to be here again. Beautiful drive, as usual. Thank you for allowing me to come, as I do every year, to kind of give you a little update on what's happening and what we're seeing coming forward in the next year. And I always have a frog when I come up here. I don't know what that is, but let's see. So most of you, as board members, have seen some of these things before, but there's some changes, and it's hopefully just to kind of refresh your memory, because I know you have a lot of things come in front of you. We are the area agency for Humboldt and Del Norte County. There's 33 area agencies in the state, and we're a little different in that we're a private nonprofit. We're not a foundation. We're also not county government. Most area agencies are part of county government. Our major responsibilities as the area agency are to develop a plan, an area plan, and to distribute the federal and state funds that come through the Older Americans Act, and also to do advocacy for seniors. So that's the area. This hasn't changed, maybe a little bit. We're losing some coastline, I hear, but generally speaking, we're making up for it in seniors. We're gaining seniors. And some of these numbers were mentioned before. Just the challenge, even though the Older Americans Act was just reauthorized and signed by the president, there wasn't new money put into it. So the challenge is, as the boomers boom, the funding is not increasing to meet the needs of those people who may need services. By 2060, they are estimating, those people who do these things, that the number of people aged 60 years and older is expected to increase by about 140% in the Humboldt-Del Norte County area. And while the actual number is roughly 51,000, doesn't seem like a lot, that's a big increase for our two counties. That's what it looks like if you graph out the numbers. The red line are the 65 plus folks, and the 0 to 24 is taking a little bit of a dip, and the 25 to 64 is taking a very small dip. In terms of overall population or percentage of the population. And it's interesting that this is roughly the numbers that we are seeing in for the people 60 plus in the two counties. There was an overall decline in population in Del Norte over the time period from 2010, and these new numbers, which I think are 2014, and they're estimates because they didn't do a census. But while there's an overall decrease, there's an increase in seniors for Del Norte County. So your population may have declined, but you have more seniors than you did, and that's primarily because of the booming population, those people turning, the baby boomers who are aging as we speak. So roughly Del Norte's population, 60 plus, is about 17%. If you put the two counties together, Del Norte has about 17% of the 60 plus population, and Humboldt County has about 83% of the 60 plus population. And the next numbers are, I'm going to go through these quickly because I think you have these. I don't know if you were given these, but you can, and please ask me questions. Just gives an overview of what the funding allocation for the funding from the federal and state governments was to Del Norte this last year, and for RSVP program funding. And the percentage is the percentage of the total funding we had available. And this is just looking at it another way, kind of breaks down the different services that we are mandated to contract out. Older Americans Act funds, high cap, MIPA, which is another Medicare insurance assistance program for seniors trying to figure out their Medicare. So these are the same numbers. And then the funding from the county for the area plan work that we do represents about 7.7% of the expenditures we spend in Del Norte County. So this year we've started working on our new 4-year plan. We are required to do this every year by the state to bring those funds here. And we've put together some new goals and objectives. We held a couple hearings, one here in Del Norte in March and in Humboldt in early April, and where we shared our new goals and objectives and different funding information and asked for input from seniors and other people who were attending these hearings. Here's what some of the folks up in Del Norte said. A lot of concern about having enough money to make ends meet. A lot of concern about needing caregivers and getting breaks for people who are providing care. This person felt they paid too much in county and state taxes. He's not having trouble making ends meet. He just has too much, just paying too much tax. People are very dependent on the Senior Center for meals, the friendships, fun and support. They love that program at the Senior Center, and it really is a great program. Concern about where they would live if they couldn't stay at home. A lot of challenges with transportation. Some people are still working to make ends meet, and they also feel that the state and federal government don't understand or appreciate rural challenges and the issues we face here. And I think that I think we can all agree that it's very challenging to get the larger populations to recognize that the unique needs in rural areas that we face. So the Older Americans Act, I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but it's mostly to show you that the Older Americans Act has a bunch of titles, chapters, way they fund money, and they're very broken up. The money listed in each of these sections cannot be taken and put in any of the other sections. So this funding is very siloed and very targeted to the services. Within the 3B, the supportive services that is on the top line, that probably has the most flexibility, but you have to put money in what they call access, in-home services, and legal assistance. Those are the 3 areas you have to serve. And access includes information assistance, public information, transportation. In-home services, we do some home visiting to assist seniors understand how to make their homes safer. We have a caregiver registry to help people find caregivers. And then legal assistance, we contract that out with Legal Services of Northern California. And they're obviously stretched. We give them $36,000 to serve both counties. So what's coming? We don't expect any new funds. Even though the Older Americans Act was reauthorized, they didn't throw a lot of new money in it. The funding that we used for health promotion and education, health education, they've changed how that can be used. It's no longer can be used for nutrition education. It has to be put into strongly evidence-based programs. So the exercise program that we offer at different senior centers and places around the 2 counties is changing to a different type of exercise program. The program up here in Del Norte, they'll remain, the teacher wants to remain doing what she is doing with the strong program, and she'll be able to do that. And when she retires from that, we'll train somebody in the sail. So we're not strong anymore, we're sailing. They love their acronyms. Caregiver services provider, we are contracting out that service this year, and to Redwood Caregiver Resource Center, who will be providing one-on-one counseling, legal referrals, assessments of caregivers, and hooking them up to the service they need. They'll also provide some support groups. I'm really strongly encouraging them to start a support group up here in Del Norte again for caregivers. That was something I did when I was at the Alzheimer's Resource Center, and I think it's really important that we have that. They will also do classes, classes for family caregivers, and also even one-on-one teaching. So they don't always have to be a class. They might go into someone's home and help them with a caregiving issue. And the funding that we get will pretty much remain focused as it is now. If we do get an increase, it's likely to be targeted in one of those silos, and we'll just push it through to the service provider who does that service. Our goals, 3 goals this year. We used to have 5. We're going shorter, which is basically helping people understand, become more aware of and know how to access services that are available locally. And often people don't even know where to call or what to do. And while the area agency cannot provide all the services people need, we are there to help people understand what those are. And in that end, one of the things we do, oh my goodness, is produce the senior information guide. And I brought, this is a new stack, this is a new one. And we have an insert for the nutrition, Del Norte food nutrition programs that goes with that. So that's brand new, and we've been getting that out around the community. And then the other goal, another goal is to encourage continued independence and healthy aging for seniors, and supporting their families in caregiving. And the services for that would be visiting the volunteer driver program that we have in Humboldt, and we're providing technical assistance to the senior center here to see if they can get a program off the ground as well. The meals, home delivered congregate, the health promotion, which is the exercise groups, and family caregiver support. And then the last goal is looking at systems improvement and advocacy. And we do this through the work of our advisory council, disaster planning. We're going to be looking at research. We're going to be looking into some practices, best practices for trying to develop more housing options for seniors. We're not going to go build housing, but look at more creative things that have worked around the country to help use current housing the best we can and help find places for seniors who are very close to being homeless, as they may age out of where they live because it's not safe, or they may go into the hospital for a health reason, and if they're renting, their rental space is gone when they come back. So we're trying to look at ways we can not increase the homeless population, and especially not increase it with seniors who really need to be in good places. So in terms of our agency, we're having fewer goals. We'll probably be participating less in community meetings and groups. We're reducing our office space a little bit, and we'll be reducing staffing where funding isn't available. We've created one fee-for-service program. We're looking at other opportunities. And the last thing, and I want to really clarify this, because when I went to Humboldt County Board of Supervisors meeting, and I used the word decline, and the next day on the news they were saying that the area agency was dissolving. And my staff came to work pretty stressed out. We're not dissolving, no, sir. What we're doing is we're looking at our ability to provide this particular service that I'm describing to you, the planning, the contracting, the tracking of the money for the two counties. That is the service that we've been providing to the two counties since the area agency started in 1980, and it's just getting more and more difficult, and if we cannot continue to do that, then we would go through that process, and there's a lot more conversations that would be had. It's not like, and it's not my decision, it's our board's decision, but then we would focus on providing those direct services that we can. So we are not dissolving, we are not declining. The board every year looks at how we make ends meet and how to do that. So they'll be in that process again this next year. Looking at it this next year for the following year, I should say. So there shouldn't be any surprises to you this next fiscal year. We don't intend that, but we're always looking at, how far down the road we can go. So, any questions?
Maggie, thank you so much. I made my first meeting finally down in Eureka as being the representative from the county there. It was, I got a little bit of catching up to do, and as one of those people that are getting awful close to 60.
What's that?
It's nice it can work that way.
It's disappointing to see that things are not looking great, so it's kind of disappointing. Any questions from the public or comments on this presentation? Board members?
I would.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Berkowitz.
Bob Berkowitz. Board members, the A1AA does a lot of good for Del Norte County, but I'm more than concerned about its ability to continue to provide services in the long term. Last year, its deficit was over $100,000, and it has not had a positive balanced budget in the last 3 years. I think it's important that you get some assurances of its ability to be financially viable and have them provide a copy of their budget to you before you make any final decisions. In the past, as a former board member, I suggested that they partner with other nonprofit organizations that could extend the Meals on Wheels program to outlying areas of Del Norte County, specifically including Smith River and Fort Dick. Unfortunately, Mrs. Kraft's response was, "We don't do that." I believe that working with a nonprofit partner is the only way that A1AA will be able to continue to provide services for our county in the long run. In view of the projected budget deficits, I would hope that the board would get a written commitment of services to be provided to Del Norte County in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or public comment? Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to respond. There was a few inaccuracies in what Mr. Berkowitz said. He was on our board, and he did see the original budget that we do every beginning of the year that did have a $108,000 projected deficit, because when we budget each new year, we do not budget any money that we don't yet have in our pocket. We are always getting grants. We had some grants coming in. That budget, that deficit, we got down to about $40,000, and we're still working on it. So he's has old information. When referring to the meals, I'm not even going to, the process that he went through to try to get meals in Fort Dick and Smith River was not a process I was directly involved with. And he spoke to the senior center director, and nobody can provide meals anywhere without money. The money that we are a pass-through agency in terms of the meals, we take the federal and state dollars and we give them out. We are not a foundation, as I said before. We have no money to give out beyond that. So we talked to the Del Norte Senior Center, and if they're able and willing to work with local partners up here to try to extend meals to other places, we're all for that. we don't provide meals. Our area agency does not do meals. Yes, we do not do that. But that was a misrepresentation of what I in fact said to him, or said to whoever I spoke to at the time. And in our assurance to you that we will provide services to you will be in the contract that we sign. If we sign a contract with you, we will meet those contract requirements that you set forth in there. So I'm not worried about that for the next year. He's right. There have been deficits longer than since I've been here, actually. The agency has, and most of those deficits are in our area plan work. About 10 years ago, or more, maybe 20 years ago, we were receiving more money from both Humboldt and Del Norte County in actual and adjusted for inflation dollars, whatever, than we are now. So while costs have gone up, both counties have been giving us less money. So that's where our deficit is. To be quite frank, we would not have a deficit if we were getting paid what we needed from the two counties to provide the service we provide you. That's the fact. All the other programs, we can work it out. So, and that's why I said we may not be able to do this for the counties anymore, simply because of that issue of the deficit. So that's absolutely true.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else from board members?
I just want to, as a member of the Senior Center Board and acting president of the Senior Center Board, the support that we get is very, very valuable. And there are people every day that are getting food and support, and a spark of camaraderie happens at the Senior Center, so it's greatly appreciated. The Senior Center is trying to possibly get recognized by the state as a community action council in order to assist with more money, which would free up food for the senior program. We also, now that we have the heating program back, the iHeat program back, that will alleviate some of the overhead that the nutrition program was needing to shoulder. So now we may see a little bump. In fact, we're hoping to get enough money that we can actually bring the salad bar back. You know, I mean, so it's tight, but we're figuring out how to make it happen through your partnership. So thank you very much.
Right, and the sad thing is when these programs started, maybe 70 or 80% of your funding came from the federal and state governments, and with the costs, increasing costs, inflation, and the lack of increasing funds, these senior centers are now paying at least 50% in their own way to find that money, and it's really challenging. And this is what will continue to happen unless new funding comes in.
We're looking for it, and we're not giving up. Every rock is getting turned.
Every rock, that's for sure. So I appreciate your time. We appreciate your support. And I will leave these with your staff so that they can be put out somewhere that people can access them, and I appreciate your time.
Supervisor Gitlin, did you have something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Ms. Kraft, I think we have an honest difference of opinion. I had a similar experience to Mr. Berkowitz. We tried, and we actually had an outreach to Smith River. As a matter of fact, Supervisor Howard, I called you and said we're going to try to provide meals, and we made a contact with Rural Human Services. They have overages of meals. There were about if I'm not mistaken, 5 or 6 seniors out there, and we were going to partner with Smith River Baptist Church, and we were going to feed these people at no cost to anybody. And my recollection is you railed at that. And I don't know why, because it's not always about money. It's about rolling up your sleeves and helping people. So I have some issues with that. And as far as advocacy, I know that you've written letters to the editor on behalf of supporting supporting acute care status because of the impact it would have on seniors. The Monument Committee, which I applaud you for, and of course Last Chance Grade. They're all on record. But it doesn't change the fact that we as a community can often do things without a funding source. And that's where I'm at a bit of a loggerheads with you. A county gives you, this agency, approximately $25,000 a year, and I suspect number might go up since you're not receiving any additional sources and your costs do go up. So I would like to know, why would you not embrace a volunteer effort through public-private partnership with the Smith River Baptist Church and Rural Human Services to provide meals for those needy who reside in Smith River. Why would you not embrace that?
That wasn't the question you put to me, and since nobody in this room but a few of us have seen the correspondence going back and forth on this, I think it's unfair for you to bring that up in this setting because they don't know what you're talking about. And
I think I just explained it, that we wanted to go.
I'm going to cut it off.
I will say that we have no problem with anybody stepping up and helping anybody in this community. That's not the issue here, and that's not what my response to you was. My response was, in fact, that we encourage you to work with other organizations to make this happen. That wasn't, my response was not, don't do something. I don't have the power to tell you what to do, Mr. Gitlin.
Supervisor Finigan.
Maggie, I'm going to be brief because I know we're running
Yeah.
behind schedule here and don't want to get into any kind of a debate. You know, I've been involved with the area agency since the Patty Burke days when we formed the Senior Center, or Senior Services Task Force to identify and then meet the needs of the seniors. It's been a great partnership, and that's what I want to emphasize. Area Agency on Aging, Area 1 Agency, has been a fantastic partner, and anybody that can't understand the mathematics between a $25,000 investment for over $250,000 worth of a yield for services, support, and advocacy needs to go back to school and learn some math. You've been a great partner, and it is those partnerships that really serve this community well, and I thank you for that, and I look forward to continuing in the future.
Thank you, Supervisor Finigan.
Thanks for the presentation, Maggie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Appreciate your comments.
Okay, we're going to move on to our presentation from the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board on the proposed designation for the Smith River as an outstanding national water resource. Outstanding national resource water, I think is the way it's supposed to be put.
That's right. So, good morning, Chairman Hemmingsen and members of the board. My name is Alita Mangelsdorf, and I am a senior environmental scientist with the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. And I'm here today to talk about a planning project that we have been directed by our board to investigate, which is the potential to designate the Smith River as an outstanding national resource water. The purpose of our presentation today was first to accept the invitation that you made to us to provide information on this project. We're very grateful for the opportunity to initiate what we are viewing as project scoping, an opportunity to share what it is that we have on our list to undertake as directed by our board, and to receive feedback from you and other stakeholders on how to design this project as we move forward. We had initially anticipated that we would begin the project with a formal scoping process, which is a process we undertake under CEQA, and we were very glad to get your guidance to maybe take a step back and to initiate more informal scoping of the project as a whole. So we're glad to be here today to initiate that. So we're specifically hoping to get assistance in defining the scope of this project and to hear issues and concerns, to answer questions as we can, recognizing that these are the early days in the development of this project, and then ultimately to prepare for the full scope of this project, developing it for consideration before our own board, including the scoping that is required under CEQA. So here are a list of things that I hope to cover in the presentation today. I'm going to introduce our planning team, give a description of this what we call a triennial review project, and I'll just explain what that means in a moment. Give an overview of our water quality control plan and anti-degradation policies and how these fit into within the context of this planning project. And then an overview of what an ONRW designation process would look like should we move forward with this project. Let me start, though, by just describing the mission of our agency. We're the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. We're one of 9 regions within the state We're the northernmost region. We cover an area from the border of Oregon down to through Sonoma County, just north of San Francisco Bay, and all surface waters draining to the ocean, as well as the groundwater basins that underlay those waters. Our mission is to preserve and enhance the quality of California's water resources and ensure their proper allocation and efficient use for the benefit of present and future generations. And some of the key authorities that we conduct our work under and are particularly relevant to this project are the Federal Clean Water Act, the California Porter Cologne Water Quality Control Act, and then our own water quality control plan for the North Coast region, which we describe as the Basin Plan, and I'll just continue to use that term when referring to it. So it's the Basin Plan. Here behind me are some members of our team. Josh Curtis, right here directly behind me, is my boss. He's the division chief and has 3 units in his division, one including planning, the unit that I supervise, an adaptive management unit. You may have, some of you may have been working with Rebecca Fitzgerald, who manages that program, and in particular she's working with some members in this community on the development of a waste discharge requirement or permit for discharges from the lily bulb farms in the estuary. And then the 3rd unit is a compliance assurance unit. A woman named Diana Henriol supervises that unit, and at least one of the activities of that unit that you might be familiar with is the development of waste discharge requirements for cannabis growing. Again, my name is Alita Mangelsdorf. I supervise our basin planning unit, and within my unit are Wendy Jones, who's here in the middle. She's a scientific aide in our unit, and she has been very busy in doing all of the sort of preliminary research associated with this project. We do not have any description of an outstanding national resource water currently in our basin plan. We don't have any waters designated as ONRWs. There are only 2 in the state, and those are Lake Tahoe and Mono Lake. And so this is a brand new concept for us as well as you in this room. So Wendy's been doing the background research both on ONRW designation across the country as well as in California, and looking specifically, doing sort of a preliminary analysis of land use and activities in the Smith River to determine its qualifications as a candidate for designation. And then next to Wendy is Lisa Bernard. She's a sanitary engineering associate, has been working for the Regional Water Board for many, many years, has a lot of experience in many different water quality protection areas within the work that we do. And at least some of that work has been here in Del Norte County, including a number of groundwater cleanup activities that she participated in the early part of her career, and most recently as part of a team in the development of the dairy permit that applies to some dairies here in the county. And then Elizabeth Barrett wasn't able to make it today, but she's our attorney and has an office in Sacramento, and so we've been consulting with her on legal issues. There are a lot of legal nuances associated with this project. The ONRW designation is, I'll say more about the anti-degradation policy, both federal and state, that describe the characteristics of an ONRW. And I am not an attorney. I will be as clear and explicit as I can, but recognize that I'm speaking from a layman's perspective and not from a legal perspective. And if you do have questions of a legal nature, we'll certainly bring them back to Elizabeth to get some feedback. Let me just generally describe, we have a water quality control plan for the North Coast region. Again, we call it our basin plan. This basin plan is our master water quality control plan. It's adopted by the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, and it is designed to control the discharge of waste and other water quality factors which have the potential to affect the beneficial uses of the waters of the state within the boundaries of the North Coast region. And so again, I just want to remind you that waters of the state refer to both surface waters and groundwater. And it's an important concept because under the Federal Clean Water Act, what we will be talking about are surface waters only. So we are obligated by our state Water Quality Control Act, Port of Cologne, as well as the federal act, the Clean Water Act, to do a periodic review of our basin plan to confirm that it is up to date with relevant science and water quality factors of the present day. And that process is something that we undertake about every 3 years, and it's, as a result, called the triennial review process. Our most recent triennial review was in 2014, and it took a full year to conduct. It involved 3 scoping meetings. We had one in Santa Rosa, one in Reading, and one in Fortuna. And we invited the public both to submit letters of recommendation for planning projects that we should undertake as high priority projects, as well as those scoping meetings offering an oral opportunity for people to share their recommendations. We also then in November of 2014 had a public workshop before the board, and in that public workshop described the results of our scoping, all of the recommendations that we had received, and began the process of ordering them in a suggested rank. That staff report and that recommended ranking went out for public review. There was a public comment period, and in that public comment period we received a number of letters that were then collected, synthesized, and resulted in our producing a proposed list to the board for their hearing in March of 2015. The result of that process was a list ranked and adopted by our board in March of 2015, which included as number 4 priority on that list the consideration of the designation of the Smith River as an ONRW. So that's why we're here today. The project, an ONRW project, has been something under consideration at the board for a number of years. Back in 2007, when in that triennial review period, the concept of designating waters in the North Coast region as an ONRW also came up. It was recommended as a broader designation, which is to say, designating all wild and scenic rivers. And so the Smith River, of course, would have been considered under that project. At that time, it was ranked as project number 18, and there were not enough staff to reach number 18 on the list. In 2011, it was again renewed as a project of interest to the board, but was ranked as, it moved up in ranking to number 11, but still not high enough for us to be able to assign staff to undertake it. And in 2014, the ranked list came to the board in the hearing with this project as number 7 on the list. And during the hearing itself, the board requested that it be moved up to number 4 and that the initial focus be on the Smith River. So again, that's why we're here today. So the purpose of designating the Smith River, if this is a project that we pursue and ultimately bring to the board, would be to protect the exceptional recreational and ecological value of the Smith River and its tributaries into perpetuity, and to further promote its value as an outstanding national resource water. It has obviously a number of other designations that already essentially draw attention to this watershed as an incredible resource for a number of different reasons, and this would be another spotlight to shine on it as an outstanding resource. Let me just say one more thing about that. Promoting its value as an outstanding national resource, we hope could be of high value to stakeholders in this room and beyond, for its potential ability to draw greater revenues in the form of tourism, recognition of the Smith River as the first river system in California to be designated as an ONRW, should we go that route, and only the 3rd ONRW in the state, the first in a very long time. It would, I think, gain a lot of public attention to the next designation, wherever it is. I think will gain a lot of attention because it has been it's been very rare, obviously, in California. And there are a number of reasons for considering designating any suitable river as an ONRW, especially in the face of climate change and the opportunity to protect ecological value that might otherwise be degraded over time. And the promotion of that value is something not only that might not only result in additional incoming revenue, but also might result in a better opportunity for public funds to do various work such as restoration and maintenance and repair work and upgrade of facilities that have the potential to discharge waste. So I think it's going to be important as we continue on this discussion to have a pretty clear understanding, at least of the basics of our basin plan, our regulations for water quality protection. We implement what we call water quality standards in a variety of different programs, and what that means, what water quality standards are composed of, are first a designation of the beneficial uses of individual waters. And so in the Smith River, you have waters that are pristine enough for drinking water. You have waters that are provide stellar recreational opportunities, exquisite fishing, and aquatic habitat that's suitable to protect endangered species. It's a very long list. Those are all described in our basin plan as beneficial uses of the water. We also have water quality objectives, which are either given as numeric criteria, chemical criteria, or sometimes given as narrative descriptions of characteristics. But those water quality objectives are meant to define the minimum water quality that's necessary to protect those beneficial uses. And this is an important concept because what we wind up talking about with respect to an outstanding national resource water is what it means to be a high quality water. And a high quality water would be any water that has some or all of its water quality characteristics that exceed those minimum levels that are defined as water quality objectives. It doesn't have to be all of the characteristics, but some or all of them. Our basin plan also includes a summary of the state and federal anti-degradation policies. What it doesn't include in that summary is any description of an ONRW, an outstanding national resource water, or what is a three-tiered system that is defined under the federal anti-degradation policy. And so one of the things that might come out of this planning project would be to amend that language to add more explicit description of the three tiers of the federal policy, and the third tier being ONRW designation. Our basin plan also has a long series of programs which are developed to implement our water quality objectives. And these are programs that are in the form of plans and policies and prohibitions. And I wanted to draw your attention specifically to prohibitions as a tool in our basin plan. Our basin plan was initially adopted as an interim plan in 1972, so it's been around for a very long time now. And in that initial plan, the board of that day adopted a prohibition against the point source discharge of waste in most of the water bodies within the North Coast region. There are only 3 exceptions, and those exceptions are the Mad River, the Eel River, and the Russian River. But in all other rivers in the North Coast region, we do not permit the point source discharge of waste. So the direct discharge through a pipe of waste, whether it's treated or not. And that was a decision made in 1972 specifically to protect the high quality surface waters of this region. And so an ONRW designation, were that to be the outcome of this project, would have no effect on that existing prohibition. That prohibition is in place with or without a designation. The other thing included in our basin plan is a description of a monitoring program, and it spans a number of purposes and a number of different programs, and I'll leave it at that. So let's talk a minute about the anti-degradation policy. There's 2 to consider. One is the state policy, which was adopted by the state board back in 1968. And it's known as Resolution 6816. It predates our basin plan. It also predates the Clean Water Act and was, as I understand it, used as a model by the federal government when designing the Clean Water Act. And what it says is that whenever the existing quality of water, and recall that for the state's purposes, water refers to both surface and groundwater, whenever the existing quality of water is better than the quality established in policies, such existing high-quality water will be maintained until it has been demonstrated to the state that any change will be consistent with the maximum benefit to the people of the state, will not unreasonably affect present and anticipated beneficial uses of such water, and will not result in water quality less than that prescribed in the policies. And so what that essentially means is that it's a directive to the regional water boards to maintain high-quality water as best as we can, unless there is pressure to allow some amount of degradation of high-quality waters for a purpose that would serve the maximum benefit of the people. And whatever that pressure is, that the degradation would never be allowed below water quality objectives. That would be the minimum required ambient water quality criteria, and that that degradation couldn't affect beneficial uses. The federal anti-degradation policy takes a somewhat broader look at water, except that it only applies to surface water, so it doesn't describe conditions associated with groundwater. What it's broken down, as I said earlier, into 3 tiers. The first tier says that existing in-stream water uses and the level of water necessary to protect those uses shall be maintained and protected. So that essentially means that the water quality objectives in our basin plan are the floor, the minimum condition. Tier 2 says that where the quality of water exceeds those minimum levels, especially for the support of fish, shellfish, and wildlife and recreation, then that quality shall be maintained and protected unless the state can make certain findings. And those are the findings that are described in our state policy. The third tier is where high-quality waters constitute an outstanding national resource, such as waters of national and state parks and wildlife refuges and waters of exceptional recreation or ecological significance. That water quality shall be maintained and protected. So essentially what Tier 3 does, which is different from Tier 2, is that it requires the maintenance of those high-quality waters, but does not allow for the degradation of that water for conditions that might be described as in the maximum benefit of the people. So it's to maintain those waters into perpetuity, or maintain that condition into perpetuity. So when we look at the Smith River, we see a watershed that has characteristics that certainly qualify it for potential designation as an ONRW. Something like 87% of the watershed are in state and federal lands, as national parks and state parks and wildlife refuges, and there are waters of exceptional recreational and ecological significance. We would also describe the waters of the Smith River for most constituents as high-quality water. So all of these characteristics together qualify it for potential designation. But let me say a little bit about what the impact of designation might be on future waste discharge permitting. What would be inconsistent with an ONRW designation would be the permitting of any non-point source waste discharges to surface waters that cause long-term degradation. And so that could be any number of different activities. I think one activity that is on the minds of many these days is proposed mining up on the North Fork in Oregon, and so that would be an example of an activity that we would not, within an ONRW, we would not permit non-point source discharges. I wanted to just remind you that we're talking specifically about non-point source discharges because point source discharges are prohibited in any event. So what the ONRW would address would only be the potential discharge of non-point source discharge waste. And non-point source waste is waste that is more diffuse, such as stormwater. It is discharged not through a pipe, but generally as a matter of runoff. Some things that could be entirely consistent with an ONRW designation, however, are continued implementation of existing waste discharge requirements, development of new waste discharge requirements for existing activities, and an example of this would be the permit now that is under development for lily bulb farming in the estuary. Any permitting of any kind of restoration activity or maintenance or repair activities, even if there were short-term or temporary degradation that resulted. This is a specific provision of some new revisions of the federal anti-degradation policy, a recognition that there are a number of activities that are just necessary, including restoration, but also including maintenance and repair, emergency response, response after a devastating forest fire, repair of failing roads, etc. Those projects may generate, in those examples, perhaps would generate sediment discharge, but they're short-term and temporary, and the activities are absolutely necessary for the maintenance of our human use of the watersheds. An ONRW designation could also be consistent with permitting of any new activities, as long as those activities were designed and implemented in a manner to control waste discharges to surface waters and prevent any long-term degradation. So there's nothing in ONRW designation that would inherently prevent us from permitting new waste discharges. They would just simply have to be controlled in a manner that didn't cause long-term degradation. There are a number of elements of this project that require some further thought, and we're very eager to get input from you, the board, and other stakeholders in the region. I have on this slide a number of items that came to my mind as I was creating the presentation. There certainly may be others, but some open questions are, what are the appropriate boundaries of an area that might be designated as an ONRW? Is it the entire watershed? Is it only those lands that are under state or federal control? Is it some downstream, a downstream point above which the majority of the lands are in federal state control? There's a question about the degree to which we need to very precisely define background conditions. Some of you may have done some research of your own and had a look at Region 6 or the Lake Tahoe, Lahontan Region Basin Plan, and you'll see there that there's descriptions of ONRW, but there's not a whole lot of detail in terms of how it's implemented or what the characteristics are. So we have an opportunity in the development of this project to decide for ourselves whether we're better off with kind of open-ended description of ONRW designation or to very precisely define the boundaries. In the same vein, there's an opportunity to define what it means to have short-term and temporary degradation, to determine the types of projects for which a limited degradation might be allowed, and what the full scope and scale of an anti-degradation analysis for any new projects might be. So all of these are open questions that we are eager to get feedback on. Our Basin Plan Amendment process is a very formal process and a very public-driven, open process. It begins with project scoping, which is where we are now. Now, in very narrowly defined projects such as this, the Smith River is the specific focus. The topic is ONRW designation. We oftentimes will combine project and CEQA scoping as one element, as the initial element of our project development. And that was our instinct when we began this project, and we got some good feedback that we really needed to begin with project scoping and move later to CEQA scoping, and we're very grateful for the guidance on that matter. After project scoping, we will be developing draft amendment language and a staff report that describes all of the outcomes of discussions that we hope to have with stakeholders over the next several months. There will be a very public process for review of any draft amendment and staff report, so including public review period, comment period, an opportunity to provide written comments. There'll be an opportunity to provide oral comments, likely at some kind of workshop before the board, and then later at a hearing when they will be making a decision. Were the board to adopt a designation of the Smith River, or honestly any other watershed that might come out of our development process here, that decision would then move to the State Board and to the Office of Administrative Law and ultimately to US EPA for their consideration, and it would not be final until we received approvals. So that's the full scope of what we have before us. We're at the very beginning now. We have some general ideas, conceptual ideas about the Smith River as a candidate, about ONRW designation generally, but this is the time for us to be partnering together to share ideas, concerns, and issues, and to learn from one another what the best approach might be in this case, or potentially to focus on in another direction altogether. I've left my contact in Wendy Lynch-Jones, who's kind of the lead on our technical lead on this project. We have initiated a web page on our North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board web page, and I know that there's been some frustration with not getting enough information about the initiation of this project on the part of some people, and so I want to encourage everyone who has an interest in keeping track of our development of this project to please go to our webpage and sign up for our LYRIS list for basin planning. That will be the key way that we disseminate information via this email subscription list. So I highly encourage everyone who has an interest to please sign up on that list. And so that concludes my presentation. I'd be very happy to hear comments and take questions.
Okay, I know we have a very large group here, and I don't want to cut anybody off, so I'd really like to take about 3 or 4 minutes, just take a break. We've been sitting here for a while. So if we could just take a break for a few minutes. I know you've been waiting here for a long time, and I apologize for that, but I would rather have a little break now so we don't have to cut anybody off later. So we're just going to take just a few minutes. Thank you. There's a lot of people here. I do want to get public comment. I'm going to take that first. Do you want people to sign up, Kylie? Would that be the best, or just have you come up? I know we have one sign up. Charlie, we're going to start with you. Please come on up, and if you've got something to say, maybe if you could get up and stand in one of the aisleways there would be great, so that we don't have to spend a lot of time in people going back and forth. So go ahead.
Okay, we start again?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
Am I speaking loud enough?
Yes.
Or too loud?
You're just right.
Okay, very good. Anyway, Charles Swenson, Director and Trustee from Big Rock Community Services. Anyway, I've got to read all this. Mr. Chairman, the Big Rock Community Service District Board of Directors and Trustees is grateful for your invitation to the comment on this issue of whether or not to support the ONRW initiative. We noted the decision made by Crescent City Council last week, and also letters submitted by the Gasky CSD Board of Directors. We further learned of this position taken by Oregon Environmental Quality Commission. We were relieved that the commission decided not to pursue ONRW designation for immediate future until more information is gathered. We elected officials in Haiichi work hard to represent the best interests in our precious township, its residents and businesses. We are indeed disappointed with the way that the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board tried to force ONRW designation into the CEQA phase without discussing the matter with the potentially affect the community, service district, municipal water providers, the city of Crescent City, and most importantly, the ranches and the farmers operating along the Smith River Basin. We sincerely hope that all agencies that should be party of this action are included in future discussions, and that all of their permanent, I can't think of read that word, Bradford did all this. Anyway, and possible consequences are thoroughly studied in the more collaborative manner. Again, we appreciate the opportunity to give us a comment today. Thank you for your time today and support for the potential stakeholders of this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. More public comment?
Linda Sutter, 5th District. First off, I'd like to thank you fine people for coming up our way and giving us a presentation on this. This is a really big issue, but there's a lot of unanswered questions. I do understand that this is the highest level of protection in the land, and that it will prevent upstream communities from polluting downstream via nickel mining. So there's a lot of things to consider here. Is this a decision that has to be made completely today? No, this is just the beginning. Thank you.
Direct your comments last
All right. And so thank you very much, but I appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
Yeah, Don Gillespie speaking for the Friends of Del Norte County. And I just want to say that this seems to me like an incredible opportunity for this community to embrace ONRW. And especially in terms of putting us on the map for ecotourism and protecting our wild river. We've put a lot of resources over the years into creating the Smith River as what it is today, and we spent millions of dollars in rehabilitation to bring our salmon, keep our salmon strong and steelhead strong on the river. It seems especially important, and as you are well aware, you've already come out and opposed to the mine on the North Fork and the Smith River, and our water quality at the Rainy extractor is highly important to this entire community, and here's another option for another reinforcement of the water quality. I can understand concerns about the estuary of the Smith River. I don't think anybody's asking industry or farming or agricultural to go away because it's along the Smith River. Certainly the lily bulb industry and dairy farming is an extremely strong aspect of our community, but when we find source of pollution in the river, then we ask them to clean that up. It doesn't mean they have to stop producing. They have to clean up their act at some point. And in terms of the mine on the North Fork, you know, and we have time to talk about all this. This is not happening today. We're just starting to talk about it. But in terms of protecting our river from the degradation of a nickel mine, I think we should certainly embrace this down to the Rainy Collector, at least to Jedediah Smith State Park or possibly Ruby Van Deventer would ensure water quality at the Rainy Collector. So anyway, I see this as an opportunity. I hope you keep open minds, and I hope we as a community can embrace this project. Thank you.
Hello everyone, Joby Rumiano Cheese. I just had one question regarding the permitting. Having dealt with city permits, county permits, state permits, federal permits, it tends to take a long time. So if someone is in violation of this act, again, what Don was saying was, you know, not shutting them down, but what type of fees, are there going to be fees that are imposed on them, or are there, what kind of sanctions are going to be imposed on someone in violation of the act, which is not clearly defined?
We have both a permitting program and an enforcement program that exists today. The same program would apply with or without ONRW designation. Anybody who was engaged in an activity that had the potential to discharge waste would need to come to us for a permit regardless. And if there was a violation of that permit, then we would apply the same principles tomorrow as we do today. So none of that would change as a result of designation. The one issue that I think could come up is that for any new activity that represented a new potential discharge of waste in the watershed, we're going to have to make some decision about what an anti-degradation analysis looks like to confirm that that discharge is controlled in such a manner as to not cause any degradation once it hits the stream. And we have a program in place, but it's implemented in a somewhat wishy-washy way at present. And so I think there's a potential that we'd want to be a little bit more precise about that.
Okay, cool.
So that's the one piece of it that I think might be different. But otherwise, the whole permitting and enforcement process would be the same.
Yeah, and the process, how long does that take, typically?
Lisa, you might know the precise details. We receive a report of waste discharge from the discharger that describes the activity and characterizes their waste. And then what's the protocol? How many days do we have?
The water code says that we have 120 days to act on an application that is complete, but oftentimes we find that applications for waste discharges that come in are not considered complete, and so we usually work with the proponent of the project to fill in any gaps in information. By the time we actually get it in front of our board for adoption, if it's not a general permit, so a general permit can happen in like 30 days, but if it's not under a general permit, it's individual, it could take easily 6 months in reality.
Okay, and I don't, the dialogue is good, but I'm not going to allow that anymore. We're here for comments, so they're going to take the comments down, and then they're going to address those. If we do this, what you're doing right now, we'll be here all day. I appreciate it. It's good dialogue. And the other thing is, if you're going to comment, this is all being taped, and if you're going to comment from the audience, we're not going to pick it up on the tape, so you need to come up if there's a direct question. And those questions will come from the board a little bit later. But right now, what we'd like to get is comments, just comments directed to the board. They'll write down, or they'll be taking notes on all the comments and concerns that you have, and then we're going to ask some questions directly, and you can stay for that.
And 87% of the area is either state or federal, so that seems a little bit lopsided against the people that actually own property on the river.
Yeah.
So that needs to be considered. Thank you.
Thanks, Joey. Next, please.
Terry McNamara, longtime resident here, and I do have one question. I think it was already answered. Can I ask you, Gerry?
Sure.
New permitting then, let's say I own a piece of property in Gasky, and I'm going to build a house. Is this going to be affected by that one more step of bureaucracy?
My understanding is it's possible. I'll let her answer that question. Okay. Have you got anything else?
Yes, I just want to say, and I'll say simply, I'm totally opposed to this. She's already explained to us that there are vehicles and avenues in place that protect our river the way it is, and I don't support what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. So new permitting is going to go through a different process, the same process, or?
Same process. So anybody would wanted to develop a house would go through the same permitting process tomorrow as they would today.
Okay, thank you. Next, please.
Carl Barley. I represent various interest groups in this community, and I do it by request of either the county or the federal government. I think nobody wants to see this river polluted. We all agree on that. Strip mine is a concern. It's out of our jurisdiction, I think. It's in another state. That's up to them to address it. The potential impact on our economy, our backcountry access issues, whether it be logging, historical access for camping, are tremendous if this were to be enforced or put in place. I think we have enough rules and regulations as it is. I think this is redundant. I hope the supervisors take this under, and I know you will, good consideration and do what's best for this community, and I don't think this is a very good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Been a long time, but my name's Dave Scott. I used to be the manager of Relleman Miller Redwood that's set right down here about 4 or 5 miles. I've been listening to this agency, Snake Oil, since they got started back in the 70s. And it's always the same thing. It may, it could, it this, it that. I came here and I wasted about an hour. I expected somebody to tell me about a problem that they had with the Smith River. I didn't hear anything about any problems. All I'm saying is we want to give more regulation. We want you to give us more money so we'll have more staff. You know, I would like to hear some problems, and I'll tell you what, when they start, I was one of the first ones in the county to have to get a point discharge permit from this agency. Took years. And now then they're talking about non-point source discharge. What that means is if you irrigate your lawn, and even if it does not go into a culvert, it is distributed, or if you irrigate your 20 acres and it's distributed and it's dispersed out, you have to get a permit under this new process. And I think it's time we start sending these people back down south where they belong. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
My name is Janet Gilbert, and I live in the county. I disagree. I think that sustainably based environmental designations and policies need to be the foundations of everyone's economies. An outstanding natural resource water designation for the entire Smith River Basin is exactly right. This designation protects our community drinking water from extractive mining contamination that is out of state, that we don't have as much control over as we'd like to, but we will with this designation. It adds layers of protection for the wild salmon, the steelhead, and the other fishing populations. Therefore, it should help our fishing industries to protect them. It protects our vital economic, recreational, and natural resources along the river. I applaud the North Coast Regional Water Quality Board for bringing forth the designation of a Tier 3 outstanding natural resource water status for the entire basin of the Smith River. It will provide a stronghold for our salmon, all the salmon, protecting critical habitats for the endangered coho salmon. Botanical riparian zones, we have rare plants up there, including the last uninfected Port Orford cedars. It will protect these. It will protect our recreational activities such as kayaking and small watercraft boating, swimming, fishing, river hikes, over 300 miles of a scenic national and state river. It protects our national recreation area. It protects the Redwood National and State Park Jedediah Smith. It is a jewel in the National Park Crown and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We need to think globally how much our lives are dependent upon the rest of the recreational tourist industry. It's inconceivable that we would not seek this protection for the mining when we see what's happened in Flint, Michigan waters. We don't want to see our waters contaminated with toxic heavy metals. It protects the cultural heritage resource of the Smith River for the native Tallawahd people here. It protects our tourist-driven economy. It does not prohibit future development and management activities in the watershed. It influences them. It influences the future activities to have in place effective and responsible management practices to prevent water quality degradation. We need stringent clean water policies. We depend on water to stay alive, and so does every other species out there. We should be doing this for all American rivers. It should just be our national standard. We shouldn't have to ask for special privileges here. This is paramount to our long-term viability as a community to have clean water that attracts resources. To us as a species, humans are not going to survive with carcinogenic water, and to everybody else on this planet, all the other species we live with. We are an innovative, resourceful people. We can revamp, we can redesign, we can recreate our timber industries, our dairy farms, our lily farms. We can hold ourselves to the highest standards and still thrive. We don't need to be afraid of regulations. I'd like to end with just a quote here from a founding father of Thomas Jefferson. For if one link in nature's chain might be lost, another might be lost, until the whole of things will vanish piecemeal. Don't let this happen to our river, our fishing, our economy, our recreation. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have the next speaker, please?
Yes, I'm Donna Thompson, live in the county, and I too applaud the idea of having this protection for our river. It will prevent new polluting uses. It will prevent the strip mining because it can protect concerning the Oregon pollution with this designation. So, go for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Mike Koopman. I'm a local fishing guide, outdoor enthusiast, and a consumptive user in the area. The first thing I would like the board to consider in this is the collateral damage. It's huge. And something that hasn't been brought up here, the potential non-use of our hatchery anymore. This discharges into the Rowdy Creek, which discharges into the Smith River. It's a vital part of my existence, that hatchery is. There's many people in this room that are going to be covered under the scope that we don't even realize yet where this is at. I would like you to consider my thought in that and everybody's collateral damage in this. I don't think there's one person in the room that wants to see a strip mine. But at the same time, the collateral damage is far and above. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Public comment? More?
Hi, I'm Tom Bissett. I live down in Requa on the Klamath River. Got adjoining property there, on a ranch. And 1997, I purchased that place and worked with California Conservation Service. We took 46 car bodies out of Hunter Creek. Over the years, worked with them and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Rural Human Resources, several other groups. We put buffer fences away from all the creeks, have 3 streams going through my property. We got 50-foot buffer zones where the cattle used to just go wherever they wanted. Planted thousands of trees. Anyone who's been in that area can see the difference between now and then. None of that was dictated to me to do. There's plenty of agencies out there, and just the farms you can see here in the Smith River lower end, you can see that kind of same stuff going on. I don't feel we need to create more agencies and oversight to dictate what we need to do. We've got good property owners. We do what we need to do. We do the right thing. I still have groups of people coming in, UROC Environmental. They want to test water, they want flows, they want temperatures. So anything you do never satisfies the agencies, and I feel that you're just giving them more control. You know, they're walking in as a kitten type attitude, and they'll leave with, you're going to unleash a tiger once they get their foot in the ground. So that's my perspective.
Thank you.
Name is Rob Miller, farmer in Smith River and president of the Yonge County Farm Bureau. It seems to me that this designation doesn't seem to be warranted. Our river flows through the National Recreation Area and is designated wild and scenic. This in itself provides many protections. Our river is clean. Fish populations are healthy. There's no current threat to water quality in the basin, and water quality data currently being used is somewhat misleading, and there seems to be no mention of the heavy metals that do in fact come from upriver, like cadmium, lead, chromium, copper, with no mine up there. They still come in the heavy water flows. There are locations in the river area where even Easter lilies can't be grown because of the heavy concentrations of these heavy metals in the soil from the high flow years. The ONRW would require many new permit requirements for development. Farmers are concerned that the misrepresentation of the background conditions will result in litigation and denial of permits. We have a delicate economy, and elimination of farms and farming jobs would be a significant impact to the county. This designation in the future could result in difficulty in issuing more septic permits, increased scrutiny on the reauthorization of the municipal water permits for Crescent City and other water extractions, eliminate small hobby mining, increase timber harvest plan challenges resulting in economic losses for the county. There seems to be a connected effort by some local organizations to coordinate letter writing campaigns in support of this. We do not need further protections. We have plenty of good protections on the river because the river is clean and has been clean, and we're not in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
My name is Mike Tolson, resident of Crescent City, and I think this presentation brings a lot of questions, more that need to be taken before anything is really considered heard. People get up here and say that it will do this, it will do that. I don't think there was enough information here to let us know exactly what it is going to do for us. You mentioned things like waste discharge. What is waste discharge? You know, description of it. And what is the scope of the watershed that's considered in this? You know, and the people that own land up in the watershed, if you want to go dig a foundation for a new home up there, how long is it, what is it going to take to get a permit? How long? That type of thing. And I'm going to go back a little bit. In 1907, the County of Del Norte went into agreement with the Forest Service to manage the forest and the logging and that sort of thing. And here we are, 100 and some odd years later,
and they deem it their forest. They're telling us or Delaware County, what they're going to do and how they're going to manage it. They're trying to shut down a lot of the roads. They're trying to just stop all motorized transportation in the forest. Then the other thing is, like, Delaware County apparently went into agreement with Sutter Coast, and look at the mess we're in now with Sutter Coast. And I would hope that the Board of Supervisors would really consider this thing down the line, 20, 40, 50 years from now, if it's going to come back to bite us. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I think that all needs to be very considered the long term, not a year or two from now, the long term. So thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, Blake Alexander, local dairy farmer, egg producer, meat. I basically agree with most everyone that spoke today, even on both sides. I absolutely enjoy the pristine, clean water that comes through the Smith River. I also understand that there are those toxic heavy metals that naturally occur out here. And I guess my point would be that I think we already have enough regulators observing, watching everything that we do as landowners, tenants, no matter whether you're living in someone else's house, or you actually own your house, or you own the ground, or you're farming, or whatever you're doing, there's a lot of protection already in place that I believe is virtually adequate. Absolutely against that concept of a strip mine coming in on the North Fork. And, I'm glad it's already stopped. But I guess my point would be, if we're going to blanket a new, gold star over our waters, then maybe we should just consider the North Fork, because we can't trust what might happen on the north side of our state border. That would make sense. I could probably get behind that. But the idea that we're bringing in this long-term perpetuity gold star status that I believe we already have, and we really don't need someone else to come in and sanction that, bothers me, and this is why. I moved to this community from Ferndale in Humboldt County about 24 years ago. And we bought some land, and we run a dairy farm or two here. I've got 3 kids that have graduated from college and are now working in the business. And so sure, I haven't been here all that long, but our intention is to stay a long, long time. I would hope in perpetuity through a family business that is viable and successful. So during that time, much like what Tom Bissett was talking about in Klamath, we've done a lot of those type of projects, restoration projects. We completely converted all of our lands to organic management years ago, starting about 20 years ago. And so we also currently have a wastewater discharge permit, or we've had one through Regional Water Quality in the past, because we take the salty whey from Rumiano cheese and we blend that into our system. In addition to that, we've worked for a lot of years with Regional Water Quality to come up with a dairy waiver program here on the North Coast that has allowed us on the North Coast, from here all the way south, down to the Bay Area, 170 dairies, I believe, gave them an avenue to have a permitting process that was long-term and sustainable so that they could stay in business. What's happened in our region throughout our lifetimes, let's just go back for the last 50 years, is dairying, agriculture as we know it, has changed a lot, and it continues to change a lot. The dairies have to get bigger. The small ones go out. Few guys come along and buy that land. Very few are new to the neighborhood. So generally, we've got 6 or 7 operating dairies in this county left from a time when we probably had 50 or more. And the same things happen in these other communities that I'm familiar with. We also farm down in Humboldt County. So as we fast forward, and my kids and my grandkids and the next 5 generations want to be dairy farmers here in our county, what does that look like? That's where I would like to go with this concept of this new gold star that we're being blessed with. The dairy facilities that we currently manage, they get older. They're getting used, they get tired, the concrete wears out, the metal rust, and we need to reinvest and we need to rebuild. And occasionally, my kids are already talking about a new milk barn. It's not here, it might be a half a mile down the road, it might be a mile down the road, but it's going to be a new facility. So we've already been told that, well, this ONRW status won't really change much except for, well, new permits. So what does the new permit look like? What's the likelihood of getting a new dairy site in our community, long term? That's kind of the point I'd like to leave you with, because I believe that this designation would inhibit that forever and eventually stop it. And I don't even want to go down that path. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
The secret process itself discourages...
Could you identify yourself, please?
I'm going to do that really quick.
Okay.
Just after I say this.
All right.
See, now you wrecked my opening.
Oh,
but,
sorry. Okay, let's pretend like you're starting
Okay,
over.
let me start over. The secret process itself disengages the local public by its complexity and lends itself to protect staff recommendations and environmental advocates who are funded to spend their time working on it. My name is Becky Crockett, and I was born into a community here. I spent 15 years being the environmental manager for an international engineering company working on water and wastewater. I spent the last 8 years as the environmental manager for the Oregon Department of Transportation. The primary issue we dealt with is water quality. And I can tell you I understood the staff presentation, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say that. But the reality is what's being proposed here is very ominous and very difficult for this community to survive under that umbrella. And I want to take a few minutes because something happened recently related to this issue that I think is really important to share. And my purpose in pointing this out is to point out how easy it is to proceed into a decision-making process prematurely. I went to the Environmental Quality Commission meeting on April 20th, just about a week and a half ago. And at that meeting, there were a few of us there. I listened to Gordon Lyford, assisted by Grant Werschel, make a petition to the EQC to designate the North Fort Smith River and all of its tributaries. The petition was denied a year ago by the EQC, and then it was resubmitted with a letter-writing campaign from environmental organizations. There were over 1,000 statements of support and 10 statements opposing. The DEQ staff recommended approval, including a statement that they had talked to the staff at the California water quality folks, and water quality staff in California stated that they were currently in a rulemaking process to designate the Smith River Basin in California, and a decision to do so was going to be expected by June of 2016. This was the statement from DEQ staff to their commission. There was no hearing on the 20th. There was only a planned discussion by staff, the petitioner assisted by Grant Werschel, and a Forest Service manager from Medford. Just prior to the meeting, it was the attorney from the Oregon Farm Bureau. They went to DEQ, the director, and convinced him to let the local agriculture industry at least speak to the commission. I spoke on behalf of the Farm Bureau and pointed out that there had been no local discussion or involvement, yet feedback of great concern by the agriculture industry, by the timber industry, by local officials, by the school board. I pointed out that no one locally knew that there were 555 acres of timberland that's in the school trust fund that would be lost, as well as several other important details that should be considered. A lengthy discussion ensued on the 20th, going way past the hour that was designated and way into the second hour. Two of the commissioners wanted to deny the petition. No one on the EQC knew how to proceed, except to state there needed to be a local collaborative process and there needed to be some standards or criteria to figure out how to review the merits of the petition. The Department of Justice stepped up with the director to help the EQC craft the motion a week and a half ago. It was to grant the petition for the purpose of proceeding with a rulemaking process. Staff was directed to apply the technical analysis they developed in June 1995 to the North Fork petition. The director made it clear that this was to be done through a collaborative process involving local people. And at the end of the rulemaking process, there could be a denial of the petition. This is the North Fork Smith River. There could be a denial of the petition. The Department of Justice also pointed out that the North Fork Smith River wasn't even an area ever considered by the state of Oregon for outstanding resource waters when they worked on it in 1995. Now, I didn't get any of that information from the article written by Mr. Worskell, and I think it's a really good observation, an example of where it's really easy for staff, coupled with environmental advocates, to set up the process to run over local communities. Once there's a CEQA process started, we're already too far down the road to stop the train. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the CEQA process itself disengages the local people by its complexity, lends itself to protect staff recommendations and environmental advocates who are funded to spend their time working on it. This one's way out there, and it would have detrimental impacts on this community. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Appreciate it.
My name's Harry Harms, and I represent Hastings Bowl Growers and Smith River Farms in California. And both companies own properties in the Smith River Basin. I got involved working with the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board 5 years ago as they began to seek to get a public input committee to write a water discharge management program for agriculture. Linda Crockett, myself, Lee Riddle were all a portion of that group. We had, over the last 5 years, many meetings, some regional, which took place in Reading, some local, which took place virtually exclusively in Eureka. That's our local meeting. And we spent a lot of time and a lot of effort working with water quality to develop a water management quality program. Eventually, the Easter Lily segment of the agricultural inputs for the Region 1 were separated out individually as they recognized that probably specific things were going to be required of and needed to be looked at from this industry standpoint to actually write an effective plan, because there's really no other commodity being grown the same way you grow Easter lilies in Northern California. By Northern California, I even mean north of Humboldt County. It's a different world. The world continues to get much different as you move north, and I think water quality began to recognize this. As a portion of this, water quality set out on a water monitoring project and have been involved in that for about 3 years now. Portions of that data have been released. Some of it, none of it was ever released to anybody but the advisory committee, but some members of the advisory committee took it upon themselves to leak that information prematurely to the press and to report it to local groups and create quite a stir over much to do with nothing, because the data in and of itself at this point proves not very much. There is a segment of it that still is to be reported, but the Water Quality Control Board is reluctant to release that information for fear that the same thing will happen. They want to have not only control of the information, but obviously they'd like to have the interpretation of the data prior to the public seeing it. So, you know, we're working with them. I don't understand why Regional Water Quality Control Board now needs an additional program that circumvents or superimposes itself on top of this. We have a regulatory program that we are working on. It should have been in place a long time ago. I think we would all agree with that, but it's working to get there, right? And it's working at Water Quality Control Board's timeline, not mine, okay? The fact that we have the dairy already working under a permit process and the Easter lily industry beginning to work and has been working for 5 years to come up with a process, and the fact that initial testing is relatively benign, so therefore there is not an obvious smoking gun problem that needs to be taken care of. I believe having an additional layer of regulation placed upon us is becoming punitive. I find it interesting that this was contemplated as early as 2007. My notes serve me right. 2007 was the first time it ranked 18th in a written request for proposal, you know, or request for what we need to do amongst our regions. By 2000, I believe you said 11. You were moving pretty fast, and I'm not quick. But by 2011, it was up to number 11, and in 2014, it was number 4. During that time, there was regional meetings in Fortuna, Smith River, and I believe you said Sacramento, another city, but I might have missed that one. And then there was a board working meeting. Now, through that entire time, I was working with my associates on a water quality management for the Smith River Basin, agricultural discharge. I never heard once about this program. You've known about it for over 10 years. How does that happen? I'd like to know when you said to me that one of the intents, that what we need to do now, one of your goals for your outreach, and I believe I quote you, this is the time to be partnering together and to work together. I thought I was doing that already. Apparently I wasn't, and apparently you couldn't inform anybody in Del Norte County for the last 9 years that this is a contemplated thing until January of this year when I responded to an email that you sent me. I don't know if you're trying to be devious or it just looks that way, but I'm telling you what, I feel wooker-dookered.
Thanks, Harry. More public comment? Anybody next? Patty?
My name is Patty McClure, and I work with the Smith River Alliance, and I wanted to begin by thanking you all, Del Norte Board of Supervisors, for inviting the North Coast Regional Board and having this opportunity for all of us, members of the community, to learn more about this proposed process. I wanted to thank the Regional Board for coming and providing us with what I felt was a very easily understood explanation of their proposed process. So I want to thank everyone, and I wanted to say that the Smith River Alliance looks forward to participating in the process as it moves forward, learning more about the potential qualifications that the Smith River may have in terms of qualifying for this possible designation. So I thank you for your time, and
thank you. Any more public comment?
Hello, my name is Stuart Blanco. I work for Tidewater Contractors. We scalp, harvest gravel on a river bar in Smith River. And, you know, our extraction plan has to be approved by NOAA Fisheries, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the North Coast Regional Water Board. The county is always invited to come out and check out our pre-harvest plan, and it's always adjusted. And you know, we've always complied with what the regulation wants and desires. On top of that, year-round, we're regulated by the Water Resource Control Board for our stormwater discharge, the North Coast Air Quality Management District for air pollution, EPA for spill prevention and countermeasures. And I just feel that there's plenty of regulation already, and this is just kind of overkill.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Going once? You're going to leave the rest of this up to us, because once I close the public comment, you're not going to get another opportunity. We'll be asking the questions, and it will be all up to us. More than welcome to stay. So I'm going to bring it back to the board then, and where we're going to ask questions. I'm going to start with Roger.
Thank you, Chair. Alita, there seems to be a great deal of mistrust in this community about this project and your goal. I'm hearing a number of comments. I hadn't heard Snooker Wookert before, but I get the general meaning of it. Dave Scott, snake oil. Tom Bissett, we can do our own regulation. We do our own. Blake Alexander, more regulations are going to be cumbersome. They're going to be costly. And the impact on our major industry and agriculture is going to be significant. Whether you say or not, it's not going to be. You see, there's a credibility issue here. And I think you and your group need to go back and huddle among yourselves and figure out why you've known about this for such a long period of time, and we're just hearing about it for the first time in January. The Smith River is one of the cleanest rivers in the world. It's pristine, it's a wild and scenic river. To put more onerous regulation can only mean one thing. It's going to be costly, it's going to be slow, and it's going to impact our community in a negative way. I'm sorry I can't go along with this ONR designation. I don't see it at this point unless there's something I haven't heard from your group. I think you need to get together and see what is in the best interest of this community, and that's what I have to contribute here.
Thank you. Martha, have you got something?
I too don't want to have anything happen to our precious Smith River by any means, but I think that this is out of the, it's not ripe, and it has not had enough of the public together, and I'm very disappointed to hear that the Water Board was actually working on an agricultural discharge plan, but didn't talk about this. I think that that's very unfortunate, because we shouldn't be in this place. And I think that sometimes state agencies forget about local communities, that they forget about the need to engage in dialogue. Because I've seen some of the improvements that have happened on some of the ranches here compared to what they were like when I was a kid. They've taken care of the land and they've nurtured the land, and I think that that is something that we need to work with. And then a more troubling aspect of this is that I came across a publication that's called Clean Waters, Wild Forest, a Citizen's Manual for Designating Outstanding Waters in the Wild Forest of the Western United States. And in that document, I mean, it lays out the steps, it has the rules for California, but the part that made the little hairs on the back of my neck stand up and say, whoa, this isn't really what it seems, was that there's a quote that says, we've identified an alternative line of defense for these wild forests that we want to protect, and it will not require us to go to Washington, D.C., but rather local and state government. We're trying to bypass the rules that we have for our national forest, is that there needs to be a NEPA analysis of stuff, but they have found that there's actually made a statement that they're trying to get around the federal government, and I found that to be very disappointing. I also know that my niece has property in Lake Tahoe, and that permitting process is about 5 to 6 years long now. And that's a long time for an individual family. So I just see that there's, I mean, the concept, when you look at the overall concept, the first time I read it, I thought, cool, that would be a great designation. But then the concept went from just the North Fork, it went to the entire basin. And I think that you need to take a look at 30241 of the Coastal Act, because ag land is to be protected. And that means that we have to find a plan, because we know there's going to be discharge, but it's just disappointing that here we have the farmers that, I mean, the little girl today, 150 years her family has lived on the land. And they're not at the table talking to you about a discharge plan, but you're at the table, your own table, trying to add an additional umbrella. I think we should get the discharge plan first, and we should be working that way rather than working for more regulation and more protection. Because I know how difficult it is for people to get a final permit, and how their applications will be deemed incomplete, and how it goes back and forth for months and months and months. But I say everyone that should be at the table, the water board employees should be having public meetings talking about the discharge plan, because we know we have to have one. I mean, so that's where I think it's just not right. I think it is I think that when it happened in California for Tahoe and Mono Lake, it was a very different reason. And I think that when you look at the rules that California has, it's 1 page long. I mean, so in essence what you're doing is that the North Coast Water Quality Board is in the process of writing water policy in California, as opposed to having the California Water Board do it. And it appears that this is the first step of the Western Rivers. So I agree, there's suspicion in the community, but there's been a deafening silence from the Water Board talking to our ag community and our resources community. So I hope that you decide to not make it your #1 priority. Keep trying to vet it. Keep trying to find the answers, because nobody seems to have any answers of how this will happen. But I think that it's correct that once you invest into the CEQA process and you're down that road at the end with a policy. We're still asking, let's talk about having this policy. And that's what this community would like the Water Board to talk about, is let's talk about why we would want it. That's it.
Thank you. David, you got it.
Yeah, I'll try to be real brief, because lunchtime and all that sort of stuff, and I don't want to be repetitive, and I certainly can't be as articulate or as informed as Supervisor McClure, but it basically is the nose of the camel under the tent. A truism is that we all want to see the Smith River remain pristine, clean. It's ours, and we're not going to do anything to jeopardize it. But where the conversation started with the North Fork, all of a sudden we're hearing about the rainy collector, and we're hearing about the estuary, and then we're hearing about a river system designation. Okay, so the camel now has its front 2 feet under the tent. We already have sufficient prohibitions. We have CEQA, NEPA, you got the Clean Water Act, you got the Wild and Scenic Rivers, you got ad nauseum, whether it's Army Corps of Engineers or National Marine Fisheries, whatever it is. The protections are there. We're not talking strip mining. It's almost a scare tactic that we're using to lock something else up. 87% is already there, so let's throw a blanket over it so we can control everything. What it tells me, when you go from 18 to 4, you have too much time on your hands, and you need to downsize your organization.
Supervisor Howard.
Got to take the time to reflect back on many of the comments here today. I know we've spent an inordinate amount of time in the last 5 weeks mulling over the consequences of what this undefined process might be. And we spent a lot of time with you on phone conferences trying to understand what little there is to understand, because it's a new process. And that's concerning. It's concerning that we're experimenting with a community that's extremely fragile. And I've stated that to you many times over the phone. We are extremely fragile for a reason. It's because we've lost access to our resource-based economy, both in the ocean, both in the woods. It's caused our community a great deal of economic depression, especially in the heart of where this thing would impact our Smith River community. I reflect back on community conversations with our sheriff in Smith River on a daily basis of what the loss of jobs in the resource-based industry has done to his department in responding to activities in the basin. And I have to question, going forward, why additional layer of regulation that you've described here today and you're uncertain of is necessary. We've been told that a process took place to bring this to your attention over many years, but it was rushed to a decision point, my understanding, from a letter from the Friends of Del Norte, specifically around strip mining on the north fork of the Smith River. It's also my understanding that just one of those letters made it to your board before the end of the public comment period, not multiple. But the board still took it under consideration without input from this county. And there does need to be a collaborative process in place so we do understand the potential impact. The weight of that sits on our shoulders more than anything, because we have to respond to our communities with our limited general fund budget that affects the sheriff in going out to responding to what is now a depressed economy from people really not having a job to go to in the morning and sitting idle. And so we've started down a process. I don't know what we're calling it right now because to me it's not even scoping, but we've started down a process of conversation to learn and understand what's involved with this. It's a good start, but we still need to understand what that baseline is. As some people have alluded to here in this room, what is the water quality baseline for the Smith, especially if there's elevated water quality issues because of heavy metals, which the EPA has identified as not even meeting clean water standards. How does that affect your designation? We need to take those steps back, and we need to look at it from a strong standpoint of how does it also affect our diversions. I brought this up 4 weeks ago in conversation, and I've still not gotten a response. Water diversions in this community are critical for many reasons, whether it's ground, whether it's surface. I know the city has rushed into determinations recently to support this, but maybe not taking a hard look at what the consequences would be for an interbasin transfer of those water diversions and how this designation would potentially affect that. That's okay. I'm hoping we get to that point. But at the same time, I've got to take a step back as I've related now to your Executive Director, Max St. John. This process that started in 1969, a bi-state process between Nevada and California for the designation of Lake Tahoe as an outstanding natural resource water, took 14 years. It wasn't thought of overnight. It wasn't told to the Oregon Department of Water Quality that it would be designated by June 2016. It was a process that was impetus around growth, specifically controlling growth within that watershed and developing a basin plan that would allow controlled growth. And I must ask again, what was the impetus for driving this discussion here in the Smith River Basin? Was it strip mining or was it broader? Because the letters that we did have access to and did look at specifically discussed the North Fork of the Smith and specifically discussed strip mining. And yet the designation we see is for the entire basin. We need to be cautious because of the fragile nature of this community, and I do look forward to having more conversations, but at the same time, let's make sure this dialogue is open and transparent.
Thank you. I've got a few things also, and of course I thank everybody up here, and I agree with everything that was said up here, and the biggest question is why. With all the controls and you know the way we've taken care of our river to this point, and the way you've been monitoring and controlling discharges and whether they're point source or non-point source, seems to be doing the job, and why we're trying to make impacts on future possible economic drivers to this community is a little disappointing, because I don't think those discharge regulations are going to change. We have no descriptions, no definitions of what we're doing. It's very difficult to comment. Is there going to be testing on every tributary, every stem, every spot to figure out where you're at to get a baseline? I think that was brought up before on how do we get a baseline so you know what is happening if there are discharges, or it's very difficult. And I was really curious on how we move up the list. There have been no ONRW designations since Tahoe or Mono or whoever was first. So if there's been no designations, and somebody was certainly at number 1, and we moved up from 18 to number 4, what happened to all those ones above us? Where are those projects, and where's the scoping and the descriptions and the definitions for those projects, and why now we're moved up to number 4, and it seems as though we're at the top of the list, and this is really getting pushed through. You talked about a formal and open process, but I think we brought that to light, that it was not an open process, that it wasn't transparent, that there needed to be communications well before a scoping process that you had already scheduled several weeks ago. And now we're at a point where it's kind of come to a head where we need to be there to comment. And I appreciate the fact that you did take a step back and you did make a presentation. There are other things, the NEPA process, Martha brought that up. I think since this is a federal designation, that NEPA should be the first thing that's done. And with that, you would have to have some sort of plan and descriptions and definitions, and all those things would have to happen so that you could go through a process. And I have to agree. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're anywhere close. We would have to have some idea of what the goals are in mind. It appears as though you're protecting us from something that you don't know what it is, and you don't know how you're going to protect us. So I think it's it's really disappointing that the city was roped in to agreeing to the Oregon portion of the North Fork when they don't have any better plan either, and I don't know how anybody can answer those questions. So the whole thing has been a disappointment to me, and I don't know if you want to address any of the questions or comments now at this point that we've made, but that's about it for me.
I would appreciate an opportunity just to say a few things to kind of wrap up our conversation here. I know that all the folks behind me have been taking good notes, and we can have a more detailed conversation in response to some of the specific questions and comments that have come up. But just to say a few things that have occurred to me while listening. I hear loud and clear that the concept of initiating this process with CEQA scoping was unnerving and concerning, and recognize that that did not sit well with folks. And we were, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, very grateful for your guidance to step back from CEQA scoping and begin with a more informal development process. What we're doing here and now is bringing a general topic, which was the direction that we got from our water board to develop this project. And that means to develop all of the details that you would like to see in terms of monitoring and descriptions and definitions. And as a result of the guidance that this board offered us, which was well appreciated, we now are endeavoring to set up meetings and talk with individual stakeholder groups and ask for a guidance and assistance in doing exactly what you described. Where should we monitor? What should definitions be? What should the boundaries of this designation be? For some groups, it may be that there's just an adamant conclusion that it's an unnecessary designation. So we have meetings scheduled for later today and tomorrow morning before we leave, and we'll be setting up more meetings in the future with individual groups to learn people's perspectives and ideas and concerns, and to look for help and guidance in how to define this project. The other thing that caught my ear was this idea that somehow by designating this water as an outstanding national resource water, that it adds another layer of regulation, that it would somehow require new permits or different kinds of permits. And I want to be clear that what the designation does is simply, the exact same water quality protection program is in place. If you never had to have a discharge permit to build a house in the past, you won't have to now. There's no added layer of regulation, but the ONRW designation just simply refines the way in which we apply our anti-degradation policy when making permit decisions. So I wanted to be clear about that. And when we have our individual meetings, we can talk in more detail about that.
You had your public speaking time.
Yeah.
If it doesn't protect anything or regulate anything, then why do we need it?
Well, my point is that it's not an added layer of regulation. The same permit requirements, a project that would require a permit before or after designation would still require a permit. It's just that the analysis for the permit, the control mechanism would be different. And that's by virtue of not allowing degradation unless it was short-term and temporary. So the last thing I'll say is that I recognize that work in a community with a state agency is sometimes difficult, and that there oftentimes tends to be some suspicion about the goals and motivations, and I recognize that that's prevalent here. We have a very fine team of people working on this project. We, as individuals, are very interested in developing relationships with the people here and working cooperatively with all the groups that have a stake in this potential project. And I hope over time that what suspicions you might have now are slowly allayed.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Alita, if I may caution you too, and this is just a reflecting back on what you said earlier. In the 60s, in the 70s, and the 80s, our federal and state governments came to our community with the idea and the plan to set aside large tracts of land for a national park, state park, and our national forest, which is now operated under a matrix, and the Pacific Northwest Forest Plan. The promises that came with that set aside is that this community would thrive on this tourism-based industry and these designations, while the other economies would be eliminated. It's been a long time looking for those promises. And I just want to say, when I caution you, that another designation based on what we've seen from our state and federal designations isn't going to bring that tourism that would be promised by an ONRW.
Thank you.
Supervisor McClure.
I would like to make sure that when you take a look at what you're looking at, and try to figure out what you would like to recommend, that social justice be part of that, because we have the potential. I mean, I get it that people want to travel, but I have people in my community that, and in the Smith River community, that don't have cars because they're scraping out a living. And if we're going to get people to lose their job in ag, in order to have tourism with people coming here in cars and money in their pocket, we need to know what this social justice what will happen there. Because, for me, I get the far north part of the river, but I don't think that's the way that we should have a relationship with ag. I think that ag knows it has to follow the rules, that our relationship with agriculture needs to be strengthened, and the communication happening together, because I think that I'm a firm believer, everyone at the table in the process, and everyone will leave the table. Some will be grumpy when they leave, others will be satisfied. But I just think that it's just absolutely unfortunate that the time wasn't given to the stakeholders.
We hope to correct that now.
David or Roger, you got anything to add?
Alita, I don't know if you heard everything. I want to make sure that everyone, this is working, okay? This is a classic case of over-government. Over-government can only mean one thing to this community. It's punitive. We have a clean river. More regulation is not what we're looking for. You've got to be transparent with us. We're all here, we're just regular old folks. I hope you're hearing that. We don't want this. This community does not want this designation, this ONRW designation. It's going to hurt our community. And you may have in your quiet moments going back and saying, well, you know, we'll find another way to bring this, again, I'm bringing back a gentleman who spoke before, the snake oil. We don't want it. So accept that and then help us in other ways, but not with more government.
David?
Something that caught me that nobody else spoke to, so I'm just going to throw it out there. You started this in 2007, and this is all about that strip mine in Oregon. And when did that happen? So I'm just saying, this has been on the books for a while. This is how this agency operates. Just be careful. Go slow.
Yeah, and it does appear as though you're trying to circumvent some process because of something else that is a possible issue, that you're trying to circumvent a process that we should be involved with, right down to the triennial review process, which we were not aware of, that there was a chance we would be moved up the ladder with all the protections that are in place. Why would this be a huge priority? That's the part that gets to me a little bit, is that you know, we've kept the water clean. We've got these discharge permits. We've been working with your agency and other water agencies to keep the water clean, and then all of a sudden this gets slapped on us too, that will impact other opportunities. So in a negative way, I believe. So you need to keep that in mind as we're moving along. I certainly think we should be moved back down to a medium priority rather than high priority. I don't know whether you want to address any more. We've probably spent plenty of time on this. We've got other business to take care of. So we've got a meeting scheduled tomorrow, so we'll meet with you then.
That's right. So I'll just thank you very much for your time and attention, and we look forward to meeting with various groups over the next several months.
Great. Thank you. And thank you all for coming and all of your input.
Mr. Chairman, request a 5-minute interview.
Yeah, we're going to take a little break while everybody moves out.
Missouri didn't say anything.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to order, please. And we're going to move along with our agenda. I think we're on to our general government items. We're going to be on item number 20, discuss and take possible action on opposing Assembly Bill 2395. Jay, is that something you're going to speak to, or David? Oh, well, I apologize for...
I'll be happy to speak to it. It's a lousy piece of legislation. It sounds good. It hurts rural counties. It's horrible for rural counties, especially us that are so underserved by non-traditional or means of communication. And by that I also mean areas that are underserved by simple cell phones. So this, what would be legacy that sounds like a good idea, is horrible for us. We were given a heads up by CSAC and by RCRC to please oppose this.
Is that a motion?
It's a motion.
Second that.
A motion and a second. Any public comment on sending a letter opposing Assembly Bill 2395? Jay, was there anything you wanted to add to it?
No, that was very clear. It really, the opposition was due to the people that may not have the ability to have the wireless devices, and right. So it's premature with the technology right now.
Any further discussion from the board?
I just want to make sure that we highlight that many people in rural California are still on dial-up to get to the internet, let alone now you want to take that phone out of their house. It doesn't make sense.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Item number 21, approve and authorize the chair to send a letter of support for the Del Norte County Fairgrounds Food Forest Project.
We received this request. Essentially, it would be the planting of trees in support of the Food Forest Project. And this request here came from Transition Del Norte, and the idea is that it would provide not just healthy supplement to the county's diet, but also some beautification as part of the project. So it's just a request for support, and we would recommend that.
Okay. Motion?
I move we send a letter of support.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll bring it back to the board. Any further discussion?
This, in its truest form, is healthcare.
Yep. Right on. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, item 22, Barbara, come up and give us good news where we can have a feel-good day.
Well, I'm not on a timed item today, given the lengthy meeting, so I could present, or just if you have any questions after reviewing the portfolio and the report that I presented, whatever you'd like.
Personally, even though I'm in a hurry, I would like you to do it so the community can really see what a good job you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Absolutely. Are you prepared for that, Sylvia?
No. Barbara, is this going to be on a
It was a PDF presentation. Yeah. Normally that's how I present it. I'm not sure.
When the font goes below 2, I have a trouble reading it, or 3
It printed, it looks like it printed horribly, and it wasn't supposed to print like that, so I apologize. Since there is no PDF presentation, I'll just kind of give you an overview of what's happening, or what happened in the last quarter. We closed out the quarter with a portfolio balance of $49,958,169. The most important thing, I think, for the quarter was that we did receive the School District Series D GEO bond in the amount of $5 million. And I immediately deposited that into our CalTrust account. We have currently 6 callable securities, so still keeping those callable securities low. And I purchased 3 bonds just to pick up some maturities in our first quarter of 2020 and to reduce the balance in LAIF that we have still. Sorry, prepared for that. Our interest earnings this quarter, I was happy to report, were substantially higher than in the previous years. We closed out earnings of $133,632.99 to be exact. And that's double what we've been seeing. So I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, making some good investments, if I might pat myself on the back.
Yes, you may.
And thank you very much. And then also seeing a nice rise in our LAIF account, and CalTrust is earning a lot more than it has in the past. So I can't say that it's going to be like this for every quarter, but I like to see a whole year total earnings to really increase, and that's my goal as treasurer.
Great, thank you. Great job.
So with the higher rates, LAIF is earning 1%, which is great. Or excuse me, not LAIF, I'm sorry, CalTrust is earning 1%. LAIF is about 50 basis points. Our CDs are pretty low right now. We were earning over 2%. Now they've dropped down to 1 to 1.5%. Luckily, we purchased in the great CD market, so I feel pretty confident in what CDs we have, we'll stay with. And then the agencies, the bullets, those are still pretty low too. We were purchasing things at 5 years at about 2%, 2.25%, and things are dropping now to about 1.5%, a little under 2%. So I've liquidated LAIF, I think, as much as I should, and so I feel pretty confident that our portfolio is probably earning pretty good compared to what's going on right now, but I'll keep track of it. Our cash flow for the quarter was pretty low. We had a negative cash flow at about $3 million in January, which is normal. February, about $680,000 in negative cash flow. In March was right under $1 million in negative cash flow. I anticipated that, so I didn't purchase a lot this quarter. My projections were a little off, but still within, I think, a reasonable projection. This upcoming quarter, obviously April's great. We're pushing about $3 million in positive cash flow. May is horrible, almost $4 million in negative cash flow, so I'm prepared for that. And then June again is pretty negative, about 1.5 is what I'm projecting. So keeping that into consideration, we had some money coming in for our property taxes, so I'm not going to touch that and just let that be used to supplement our negative cash flow. Other than that, I might pick up a few things for May. We do have some more money in LAIF. If the rates look good, I'm not desperate anymore to get that money invested. So that's sort of the overall quick report. Did you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions, but I certainly have a comment. It's very refreshing. I think I've said that in the past.
Thank you.
The direction that you're going, and real supportive of it. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anybody else?
No, it's excellent.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Okay. Item 23, approve and authorize the chair to sign a letter supporting funding by the State Coastal Conservancy for the North Coast Regional Land Trust proposed Klamath River Estuary Wetlands Conservation Project.
Good afternoon. Would you like a brief overview, or would you just like to ask questions?
I think questions are okay with me because I'm fairly aware with what's going on. So if anybody has questions. Roger?
You know what, Heidi, I'd appreciate a brief overview because we're on TV. Sure. And particularly if you would address some of the possible consequences
okay.
of this.
Mr. Bissett is a landowner in the Klamath area, specifically in Ruckwa near the Klamath Estuary, and he owns agricultural zoned lands that he proposes to place into a conservation easement. He has worked multiple years with the North Coast Regional Land Trust and other in state and federal agencies to identify a funding source in order to implement the conservation easement. And recently we were asked to consider putting a letter forward to the board to send to the State Coastal Conservancy in support of a disbursement of funds to the North Coast Regional Land Trust to actually implement that conservation easement. Some of the potential impacts would be, I guess, could be perceived as limited development rights on the property. It's zoned agriculture and other resource-based designations, and from the standpoint of, say, housing, we don't consider resource-based lands for housing, so we're not going to be taking a hit with our housing inventory. And we have plenty of policies in our local coastal program and in our general plan that support the preservation of agricultural land for agricultural use, as well as policies that support, maintenance and restoration of riparian habitat, wetlands, fisheries, etc. And this project the conservation easement, by keeping the land in a single landholding, will likely make sure that all of those particular qualities are maintained. So as far as something we would be losing, I looked at it from all different angles and I couldn't find anything other than the one thing which we are not losing, which we did work with Mr. Bissett and the North Coast Regional Land Trust earlier this year, or last year, had to do with making sure that whenever if we do eventually receive funding to make improvements on Reckwall Road, that we would have adequate area to make any right-of-way improvements. And I was assured, and there's a letter in here, that that would be built into the agreement for the conservation easement.
Great, thanks, Heidi. Anybody got anything else, David?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to work with Tom for several years. He's been always open and inviting to taking tours of his property. I saw that property 40 years, well, 35, however many years. I guess it has been over 40 years, 45 years. And the fantastic job that he has done on restoration of not just for ag use, but of fisheries, of restorative wetlands, of trees, he just really cherried that property out, and to maximize the benefit for the economy of the farmer, but more importantly for the environment down there. He has been a great partner with the county. We talk about relocating roads and coming up with great ideas in a very proactive manner. And I would be proud to make the motion to direct the chairperson to send this letter to the Conservancy.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Okay, seeing no public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 24. Approve and authorize the chair to sign a letter expressing concern with and opposition to SB 1317, the Aquifer Protection Act.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Randy.
So this item originated at the request of Supervisor Hemmingsen. This was through the Natural Resources Goal Committee. Essentially, SB 1317, which is also known as the Aquifer Protection Act, would require that the county amend the county code, and it would be specifically for the purposes of placing in a requirement to require conditional use permits for wells within medium or high priority groundwater basins. And this will get into the later discussion regarding SGMA when we talk about medium and high priority basins. As you're all aware, use permits are discretionary permits. They have to be reviewed and acted upon by the County Planning Commission, and in some cases they would be subject to CEQA. SB 1317 does exempt some small yield or replacement wells from the use permit requirements. However, there's a significant concern on the part of county staff after having reviewed this legislation dealing with issues regarding unfunded mandates, no resources being provided to the county as part of the implementation of this mandate, as well as some potential conflicts with the SGMA requirements, which are now in effect and in the process of being implemented. The bill is, I think, being broadly opposed by affected local governments, as well as advocacy groups like CSAC and RCRC. Interestingly, it is making its way through the legislative process, and I did see that it was actually approved in a committee yesterday. So the next step would be through the appropriations. Our hope would be to address our concerns, or at least have our concerns addressed before it goes into actual ratification. And at this time, staff is recommending that the attached letter be transmitted to the bill's author, as well as to our elected representatives, Senator McGuire and Assemblyman Wood, and also RCRC and CSAC.
Great. Any questions from board members at this time?
There's no questions. It's just a statement that, we've been warning about the nose of the camel under the tent. And while it says it specifically exempts domestic wells that don't draft over a certain amount, this has been attempted prior to 2007, like this other one, through different mechanisms and insertions in different bills, and now they got their own bill here. We need to be firm on rejection.
Motion?
Move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment? Okay, seeing no public comment, then we'll bring it back. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, item 25, discussion and direction on animals at the local animal control shelter. Time required to hold.
Hi, Justin Riggs from Animal Control. And what I'm looking for here is the reduction of holding dogs down to 3 business days. It is currently 5 business days. This holding period on dogs has several effects which might not be so obvious that I wanted to highlight to you today. One of the biggest is the dogs are not handled by our volunteers until they become county property. And when you have a situation where there's a 4-day weekend, such happens at Thanksgiving and Christmas, those days don't count. We're not open, they're not business days for those purposes. So you have dogs that languish, especially when we're overcrowded, that we're using our medical isolation area as general housing. There's dogs that languish back there for 12 days. Some of us on staff use our lunch breaks or stay after work or come in on weekends at times to get those dogs out when we can, but you know, with as full as we've been, it's been a real issue. So having those dogs declared as county property earlier will allow our volunteers who provide a good 80% of the enrichment our dogs receive, maybe more, to get access to those dogs to work on exercise, socialization, training, evaluation for adoption, or possible networking to other shelters. All that can happen more quickly. Another aspect of this is we have an epidemic of way too many dogs in Del Norte County. There's more dogs than there are good homes for them. So being able to get dogs fixed is going to cut back on that. It's going to be a long-term process, but it's something that a battle we've got to win one dog at a time. So I've been working more closely with our volunteers and the Humane Society to get dogs fixed quickly. This can speed that process up as well. So obviously, after the 3 days, a dog can be adopted and out of the shelter and into a good home. That's another big benefit. Legally speaking, it doesn't look like we can rescue them out of the area until 6 business days, but at least we'll have more access to the dogs to evaluate them before sending them to rescues. So I understand that there was a concern of what happens if somebody's dog, you know, they're on vacation, and that actually has happened a couple of times where someone was out of town, they left their dog in someone's custody and didn't really check back on them. The person who was watching the dog ended up not being reliable in both the cases I'm thinking of, and they come back to town several weeks or a month later and find out their dog ended up at the pound and then was adopted out. So that I understand that is a risk, but I think the benefit to the dogs of not being locked up for such long periods of time outweigh that risk, as well as there's a small financial benefit to us in having less dogs there and in having the volunteers able to aid in the care of the dogs more quickly. They really do take a large burden off of our shoulders as far as canine care.
I'll offer you a compromise. Okay, it's been 5, you wanted 3. In talking with some members from the Humane Society, I think there's a couple issues that you highlighted. One is spay and neuter, and the other is the ability to exercise. I hadn't really heard that. And what we're trying to protect against is shortening the time period when somebody can come claim somebody else's dog, or some people feel members of the family. So what about if we kept the time period for the hold in place at 5, but after 3 days allowed the dogs to come under the county's care for spay and neutering and for exercise?
That sounds like a very reasonable compromise, and I think it would address what I feel are really the biggest humane concerns to the dogs that being locked up for such inordinate periods of time.
Okay, so then I would make a motion to offer that suggestion for direction.
For the direction. Okay.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. This was a tabled item, was it not? I thought we had tabled this and we had a motion which awaited a second. Is this, that's what
I don't think there was a motion to table.
I don't know that we had a...
I thought I heard that it was a tabled item at the last meeting.
I think we pushed it off onto another meeting, but I don't know about the table.
I don't recall it being formally tabled. I think that there were questions, particularly about the holding of the animals that might be somebody's pet, and we wanted to be able to give Justin some time to come in and discuss those. So I don't think it was ever formally tabled.
Okay, well,
do you remember that emotion?
Well, I heard the word, we're going to table it. That's what I heard.
Oh.
And now, I thought we were going to hear from County Council on whether we are in conflict with state law.
Yeah, so that was part of what we wanted to do, and we actually had a meeting shortly after to talk about what this would look like, and it would probably be whatever is done, whether or not the policy actually changes, there would need to be a code amendment, because our codes as they are, we have one code section that states that after 3 days the dog can be euthanized. That's both inconsistent with what we actually do, what the policy is, and with state law. Then we have another code section that states that there will be a 5-day hold for the owner, but when you have 3 days that it can be euthanized and 5 days that the owner can come back, then there's a bit of a discrepancy of what happens in those latter 2 days. And then the state code actually says that the hold for owners is required for 6 days, but that the dog can be adopted out between day 3 and day 6, which is what we talked about as far as sending them to a rescue agency. Under California code, they would not be able to do that until 6 days, but under the California code, they would be able to adopt it out between day 3 and day 6.
Well, the question, I just wanted to get clarification from you, Liz, on this is that we don't euthanize in this county, so 2 options you mentioned are not applicable, all right? Yes, we do. Do we euthanize animals in this county?
Not for space. So it's only happened twice since I've been here. Once was a dog that never entered the shelter who had major medical issues, and it was recommended to me by a veterinarian to give that authorization. The other one was for a temperament issue of a dog that had 2 vicious unprovoked bites on our ground, so we couldn't safely maintain the dog any longer. Those are the only types of situations where that would happen. And I think that's pretty good given how many dogs have come through our place, hundreds in the less than a year that I've been here, and actually one of them, again, never did enter our facility. And the vet said absolutely there's no other good course for that dog.
And just for the record, state law does allow for those situations as well, where the animal is unable to be cared for, or those types of situations.
So I think direction would be to get together with county council so that we could make a code change and bring that back to us with Supervisor Finigan's recommendations, and make sure that we stay within the guidelines of the state law.
It seems to be all conflicted.
Yeah. So.
Is it our rule or the state rule that you have to be hands off with the dog for the first 3 days?
That's apparently something that's been a departmental policy, and that was part of why I brought this here at Jay's suggestion in the first place, because the origins of that policy were kind of unclear, as are some of the other departmental policies to me. So,
because to me, that would be like sending someone to jail and say, we are not going to feed you for 3 days because you're not our property yet or something. I just think that we should change that too, that any dog that comes in can be cared for and exercised and handled.
I think what we have is we have some antiquated ordinances, because if you look at the ordinances for animal control, they say dogs. Yeah. And I mean, really, they are antiquated and they need to be consistent, and state law has changed, and I think the direction that the board would be giving on this with the solution will be able to clear up a lot of those issues. And then there are policy questions Originally, I believe the animal control office, ag commissioner had put the policy in place for the limited euthanization. I'll put that in there because it's been very, very low for many years. Was a policy that he basically put in himself. So there are these types of things that are popping up now that need to be clarified, and Justin would like some direction on those. I think he's got that, and we can move forward on those.
Yeah. Yeah, bring us back something, if we have to change the code first or at the same time or whatever, let's bring back something that's consistent that we can work with. I think the recommendation that Supervisor Finigan seems to be something that you're comfortable with, and I think the board is probably comfortable with. So let's put those things together and bring it back to us with a plan, and we'll move forward.
Okay, thank you for your consideration.
You bet. Okay, so we are going to adjourn as the Board of Supervisors and reconvene as the Board of Equalization to possibly approve a disabled veterans exemption fund of taxes paid for the additional 4 years, 2008 to 2012. What does that mean? Okay, give it to me.
Okay. Good afternoon. Jennifer Perry, Del Norte County Assessor. What we have brought before you today is the approval, asking for your approval of a request for refund for a veterans exemption qualified applicant. And typically for refunds or corrections to the tax roll, the assessor can only correct 4 years, current roll plus 3 prior. But Senate Bill 1113 was passed and amended that section 5097 that allows us to make corrections for veterans exemptions refunds to 8 years. Though the rule still stands that the assessor can only approve 4 and the board has to approve the later 4. So that's why we're here today. Is the applicant is qualified, all of the proper documents have submitted, everything's been reviewed. The assessor has approved 2015 back to 2012 and submitted those roll corrections to the auditor. And so we are here to ask for your approval on 2011 back to 2008.
Cool. Motion?
I move that we, what were the years?
2008 to 2012.
2008 to 2012, and we approve the exemption.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Public comment. Do we have any public comment on this? Seeing no public comment then, any more questions from board members? Kylie, would you poll the vote, please?
Supervisor Howard?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor Finigan?
Yes.
Chair Hemmingsen?
Yes. And what about 2012 to 2016, or 2013, I guess, to 16? Do we always keep it in 4-year increments? Is that the soonest that you can request the refund, or do you do it annually?
Exemption, you will get it every year until the death of the qualified applicant, or if you're a surviving spouse and that spouse.
Okay, I understand.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, legislative and budget issues. Jay?
You may want to speak to the first one, which this really leads into the other 3 below, but we've addressed a few of those up above in general government. In general terms, there's a lot of legislation out there. We're following the bills as they come through. We're trying not to miss any.
Resource related.
All of them. All of them. The question about unfunded mandates that Randy brought up earlier, we've talked to Senator McGuire about those. If there is a cost to a county, it should be a funded mandate. But we do see a lot of bills that are going through, and I think he was co-sponsor on one, he wasn't the sponsor, but it did say that there would be a new program, but then it comes back and says, but it'll be an unfunded mandate. So we're usually arguing in favor of having some form of compensation so that it comes through the process of being reimbursed for mandates. But right now what's on the agenda is what we're asking the board to take up today. There may be others as they come down the pipe here.
Yeah, and what little I know about SB 1396, which is the Intercoast Range Conservancy, while some of these conservancies are able to get a lot of funding. In this particular case, I think there's 4 segments, 4 sub regions, which we would be Del Norte, Siskiyou, and Shasta County, I believe. And out of those 4 sub-regions, there's only 1 representative for those sub-regions. So we could, we could be being represented by Shasta County, or or Siskiyou County, or we could be the representation for Shasta County. Doesn't seem exactly right to me, and there was some other issues. Randy, I don't know if there was anything else you came up with or remember. Do you know anything about the intercoastal?
I've looked at, I reviewed it. In general terms, it was, it's a sub-region within a region, and it does seem to be a little strange that we're attached with 2 inland counties. Essentially, it would allow for the collection of funds for conservation-based projects. On the face of it, that would be a very positive approach to some of the issues out there. The other portion of it is that it does also lend to land acquisition by that group. It does have provisions inside of the act that would require that they collaborate with local government anytime that there's going to be an acquisition or a project. That's a word that sometimes can be interpreted different ways. From the overall standpoint of the conservancy, the idea, I think, is admirable because it generates or could generate funding that could be used on projects for any of these counties. And there is there are boards that would be elected, and as Supervisor Hemmingsen mentioned, the supervisors of each county would elect 1 person to go forward to be elected by the group. And so representation may be limited in regards to who we have from another county or us being representative of other counties. So the process, I think, is a little unwieldy. The overall idea seems to be a positive.
So I guess we just, and who is the author of this? I think McGuire is a co-author, isn't he? Or I did mention it to Senator McGuire, and he did say that he would get me some more information, but I don't have that yet.
Senator Wolk was the author.
Yeah.
Assemblymember Dodd and was a principal co-author, Senator McGuire a co-author, and Member Levine as a co-author. And some of this is already in place. This is the formation of the conservancy under of the subregions under the original act.
Yeah. So I really don't know where we go with it, other than trying to get more information or try to get involved in the.
I would make the recommendation that we provide a letter of comment back to the author, and certainly make sure we CC the co-author in our area, and explain to them some of the reluctance we might have in regards to representation. Okay. Also, maybe comment in regards to acquisition. And the need to coordinate, not just collaborate, but to have direct coordination with the county in which the acquisition may occur.
That sounds good to me.
Yep.
We're okay. Do we need a motion?
I think we have consensus.
Just direction.
Okay, direction was great. You got it. Okay, 29, direct the county administrative officer to prepare a letter of response to the administrative division of judicial council regarding our courthouse.
For quite a few years, I've been explaining to the boards the legislative action that was taken in 2002 regarding the courts and what our obligation is, what the state did in regards to courthouses. At that point, the legislation allocated the responsibility of the courts over to the Office of the Administration of the courts, and put us on the hook for paying for it, basically. So our courthouse was transferred over to the state. We paid off the debt, and we have a court facilities payment that we'll pay in perpetuity to the state of California for having a court in Del Norte County. We also have 2 offices that are integrated into the courthouse and very much need to be located adjacent to or inside the courthouse, and that would be probation and the district attorney's office. We pay for the area inside the courthouse through a joint occupancy agreement. Basically, we rent the space. Also part of that legislation was an agreement, which I can tell you was really not an agreement, it was legislated, that we pay a percentage of the common area based on our footprint. So quarterly we meet with a representative of the Administrative Office of the Courts who talks about what they're going to do to improve the courthouse, maintain the courthouse, and within the parameters of that original agreement, what we would be required to pay, which is 37.8% of the improvement. At this point, we have paid on carpeting, parking lot, tree removal, fire suppression system, a number of things that are general maintenance, if you want to call that. Now, the most recent one, and it's been coming up over the last year or so, was the roof, which it's about a 20-year-old, a little over 20-year-old building, and they're looking at replacing the roof. When you take a roof off of an old structure, you may have other improvements. Right now, the estimate is over $800,000, of which we would be on the hook for 37.8%. The letter that I'm requesting the board to approve today is to explain to them that that is financially a detriment to the county of Del Norte. I mean, we've been working several years on getting a roof on the Flynn Center building, which is a direct need of our services and support. And through our last discussion at the quarterly meeting, they suggested that if we were in a situation where financially we couldn't support that large of a project, that we address that through a letter. I'm requesting that you direct me to do so, and then we'll discuss from there how that happens and what their priorities would be after that. The gentleman we work with is a very nice guy. He has to deliver the bad news. One of the other projects that's coming forward is sliding doors on, I believe, the west side of the building because of they have had troubles with the regular swing doors. So those are coming. There's some other smaller projects dealing with ventilation and access. So it doesn't ever end. They come forward with projects. They tell us what that estimate is going to be and what we could foresee in the future would be our cost.
I just have a little housekeeping to take care of first. I did not adjourn as the Board of Equalization. No, we listened to you. We were right outside the area and listened to you. Since it's only direction, we are going to adjourn as the Board of Equalization and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. So I just thought I would say that, and we're still going to direct you to get a comment letter to the...
I would move that we confirm the direction given under items 28 and 29 to the chair to sign the letters.
Thank you. I got a motion and a second.
I just
All
have
those in
one,
favor?
Oh,
Aye.
I just had
Public
a comment
comment?
on the courthouse. That 38% is ours because that's what they've determined our portion of the square footage.
The portion of the building that's common area, yes.
And then the portion that we pay in rent.
We're responsible for that area.
But it's because of the amount that we rent there, they determine what our common area is?
The common areas are defined under the agreement, the joint occupancy agreement, as hallways, parking areas.
Right, but I thought that the amount that you pay to repair was based on the amount of how much square footage you took in the building.
Plus the common area.
The common area, yes.
Right, so there could be a good reason for us to say, you know what, probation, let's move you across the street. We own the land. And the DA's office. We own the land.
To date, the amounts have been low enough that it isn't
correct,
economically feasible or justified to do that. If we were to look at a $200,000 plus bill, then the question is it more feasible to move out? We have looked at other buildings over the last 5 years, and the question of retrofitting existing buildings as opposed to building, you have to service that debt. And
right.
So this is one of those that definitely will bring up that discussion.
This is general fund money, is that right, Jay?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Jay, is this 37.8% a figure that's applicable to all 58 counties? Or is there a difference in proration, smaller county, suburban county, larger county? I know they have more court facilities in LA County, for instance.
That percentage is based on our common area. Whether or not another county actually has space within the courthouse determines whether or not they would have a JOA, joint occupancy agreement, and then what that area would be. So if somebody may be, you know, at 20% or 50%, that's what I believe theirs would be negotiated on. Ours is very detailed to what we have here in Del Norte County.
Thank you.
We also have some area in the jail that's covered by the JOA too, the old traffic court area.
Okay, so you have direction. Send them a letter. Okay, one more letter to send to Senator McGuire and Assemblymember Wood on the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which has to do with the
timing of the implementation.
Timing that not lining up with the where we need it to line up. I will say that I did talk to McGuire about this, mentioned to him, he thought they could fix it administratively. If that's the case, we probably need to get him a letter out. But go ahead, Randy.
Okay, sure. I'm anticipating you want a brief presentation based on the feedback from the previous, so I will keep it brief though.
Please. Kylie is getting hungry.
So as we know, under SGMA, the State Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, there are certain timeframes that are coming up that we have to consider when it comes to our local responsibilities. This has to do getting back to the discussion of the medium prioritization of our groundwater basin, efforts of the Department of Water Resources to classify the Smith River Plain Basin as a medium priority basin. Over the course of the past year, we've essentially engaged in a very critical analysis, I would say, of the conclusions that they reached. And as part of that analysis, we determined, or we discovered, data that wasn't included in the initial basin prioritization, which artificially inflated the groundwater usage within the basin. I guess in a nutshell, when the Department of Water Resources conducted the initial groundwater basin prioritization, they included within the basin approximately 10,000 annual acre feet of water consumption from groundwater resources. Through the course of this analysis, the data that we discovered in the Department of Water Resources database actually suggests that number should be closer to about 6,000 acre feet. We've emphasized this point through conversations with the Department of Water Resources staff. Unfortunately, they are in a position that they can't unilaterally make the changes that we all agree are probably necessary. Thanks, I think, to the efforts and leadership of Supervisor Howard on this particular issue, we've had even the conversation with upper levels of management and legal staff at the Department of Water Resources. They've affirmed the conclusion that we've reached, that there doesn't appear to be any administrative immediate fix, but there could be a legislative solution to this. So what staff is suggesting at this point would be a modification to some of these implementation measures that would allow for us to develop a GSP alternative, a groundwater sustainability plan, on the same time frame that the groundwater sustainability plans themselves would be mandated. It's kind of crazy, but the GSP alternatives were actually required to be submitted 5 years before the GSPs themselves. So if we don't avail ourselves of the opportunity of doing the GSP alternative, we could ultimately be in the position of having to do the full GSP, while at the same time knowing that this shouldn't be applicable to us. So we hope to continue to make the case through the basin reprioritization that we should be a very low priority basin. But in the meantime, we'd like to get that deadline pushed out. It appears the only way to do that would be through a legislative solution. I think the solution is pretty straightforward. In this case, it would be just looking at the water code, specifying a new due date on the deadline for the submission of those GSP alternatives. And I truly think this was something that the legislature just didn't anticipate whenever they crafted SGMA. I think it was one of those things that just fell through the cracks in the complexities of all the other workings of SGMA. And hopefully through this letter, we can put some light on the issue and hopefully get a fix.
Okay. Yep, let's have a motion.
Also move to sign the letter, to have the chair sign the letter to Senator McGuire and Assembly Member Wood, requesting the simple legislation be developed to address the problematic timeline of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act as requested by the Assistant Community Director of Community Development.
I have a motion, and I have a second. I have a motion and a second. Public comment. Seeing no public comment, then anything else from the board? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Chairman?
Do we need to go into closed session?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Sorry, I just have a quick question. When you guys pulled item number 10, I think, yeah, from the consent, don't we have to have a separate vote on it since it was pulled for further discussion, or no?
We discussed it. We didn't pull. I didn't pull it off the agenda.
Okay.
We just discussed it.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to convene in closed session. So I'll again ask for any public comment on closed session items only. We're going to closed session.